Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Morning teasing. The morning sun shone gently through the white sheer curtains of a humble but warmly lit room. Dust motes glimmered like tiny stars, drifting slowly in the motionless air. On the bed, entwined in a knot of ivory sheets, were two figures, naked and warm under the blankets, skin to skin, heart to heart. Leon's raven black hair was spilled across the pillow, disheveled and falling just below his broad shoulders. His breathing was calm, chest rising and falling in serenity. The woman beside him, snuggled into the bend of his arm, had long, silky hair the deep amethyst hue, a strong contrast against the cream sheets. The two figures bent together naturally, as if sculpted for each other. Her leg was over his, hooked around his. Her naked arm sprawled across his chest. His hand lay on her lower back, fingers spread in a soft, possessive grip. There was a moment of silence. Then Leon shifted, slight twitch of his brow, flicker of his eyelashes. Slowly, he opened his eyes, molten and golden like sunlight pouring through amber. They glimmered for a moment in the morning light, acclimating to the world. He blinked, gazing down at the weight in his arms. There she was, Arya, asleep still, her face pressed against his bare chest, lips open just a little as she breathed. Her violet hair spilled across his arm like a curtain, the finer strands dancing across it like sparks. The corners of his mouth curled into a soft smile. Still sleeping, he whispered, sweeping a few strands of hair away from her cheek with gentle fingers. As his fingers traced her temple, Arya shifted, her form pressed instinctively against his, soft curves aligning with the warmth of him. A little hum left her lips, and her long eyelashes fluttered. Then, her eyes opened. Deep purple met golden. For an instant, she appeared confused, as if trying to recall where she was. Then her eyes widened in surprise, scanning the man whose arm she was in, whose chest rose under her handbare. Oh, she breathed softly, voice little more than a sigh. The warmth in her face spread quickly, reaching the points of her ears. And then, with a flustered whimper, she hid her face in his chest, from the world, and from him. Leon laughed, the sound warm and deep. "You're adorable when you flip out," he whispered, enwrapping her in his arms and holding her closer in a firm, playful hug. "Ah, Lord," she whispered, her voice stifled. She gasped once more when his hand dropped lower, his fingers outlining the shape of her naked hips, then skimming over the delicate skin at the top of her thigh. Their bodies lay hard against each other under the sheet, the heat between them leaping from ash to flame. Her gentle femininity touched against the swelling forced manhood between his legs. "Oh, Lord, don't. I'm still sensitive there," she breathed, biting her lower lip as a quiet moan escaped her. "I know," he whispered playfully, his voice brushing against her ear like velvet. "But how can I resist when you're this beautiful?" His hand caressed her again, slow and deliberate, stirring goosebumps along her inner thigh. "You blush even brighter than the sunrise," he joked. "Arya, you look even more beautiful like this." She shivered at his touch. Her thighs automatically clamped together, but it only made her feel the friction more. "Oh, Lord, please," she whispered, shivering in embarrassment and lust. He leaned in, kissing her cheek softly. "We're husband and wife now, Arya. You don't have to be shy, and definitely don't say Lord anymore." Her heart skipped. The word resonated in her mind like a spell. Husband and wife. She blinked, shocked. "Wife?" she stammered. Leon pulled back slightly. Brow rose as he studied her face. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. Arya's mouth opened, her words shaking. But, Lord, how am I to be your wife? I mean, I'm a maid. How am I your wife?" Leon's eyes shone with mirth, and he leaned forward once more, voice low and honey smooth. "Arya," he told her, "I rode you last night. Hard. Several times. If that doesn't qualify you as my wife, I don't know what does." Her face flamed crimson, and she looked away, lips parting as if to protest, But before she could speak, Leon captured her mouth in a slow, passionate kiss. It was tender, deep, silencing every doubt with a single touch. When they finally broke apart, breathless, he smiled against her lips. "No more objections," he whispered. "From now on, you're my wife." Understood. Her heart thudded in her chest, every fiber of her body shaken by the strength of his presence. She nodded hesitantly, her voice no more than a whisper. "All right." Leon supported her cheek, his eyes drawing hers. "Now," he instructed, "say my name." She gazed at him, wide, shining eyes. "El Leon," she whispered, soft and tentative. He smiled in contentment, one hand skimming her waist. "Now you actually resemble my wife," he told her, squeezing his hips gently into hers. She gasped, covering her face once more in his chest, but her smile betrayed her. They were just seconds from dissolving back into the warmth of each other when a voice they recognized broke through the morning. "Well, well, sorry to intrude, lovebirds," the voice taunted, playful and sweet. "I realize you're having your first morning of bliss, but I was beginning to feel a bit left behind." Leon swiveled his head, and Arya peeked around his arm, shocked. There, sit back in the padded window seat, a leg drawn up under her, was Rias. She was dressed in a red silk gown that hugged her curves, her crimson hair spilling over her shoulder, her matching crimson eyes sparkling with mischief. She cocked her head with a grin. "Hope you don't mind me crashing your honeymoon suite." Leon groaned theatrically. "Rias." Seriously, Arya, her face blazing with color, squeaked. How long have you been there?" Rias grinned like a fox that had just caught a particularly tasty rabbit. Draped casually on the window seat, her crimson hair spilled like wine across her shoulder. She had her legs crossed and her elbow resting on the windowsill, as if this entire scene was her personal morning entertainment. "Long enough to hear someone moan, 'I'm still sensitive there.'" She winked. "So, not long, but just in time." Arya hid her face once more, this time hoping the sheets would engulf her entire body. Leon, however, simply laughed. And thus began the morning, enveloped in warmth, laughter, a mess of limbs, and the promise of love that disregarded status, titles, and the ways of the world. Arya's embarrassment. Arya, her cheeks flushing to the roots of her purple hair, peeked from beneath the cozy blankets as if the blanket could protect her from reality itself. How long have you been standing there?" she squeaked, her voice little more than a fluttering whisper. Rias grinned like a fox that had just caught a particularly tasty rabbit. Draped casually on the window seat, her crimson hair spilled like wine across her shoulder. She had her legs crossed and her elbow resting on the windowsill, as if this entire scene was her personal morning entertainment. "Long enough to hear someone moan, 'I'm still sensitive there.'" She winked. "So, not long, but just in time." Arya buried her face in Leon's naked chest with a moan, hoping desperately for a lightning bolt to blast her to smithereens or the mattress to engulf her. Leon, unflappable as ever, merely laughed as he drew Arya in, clearly entertained. "Good morning, Rias," he said, voice still rough from sleep. "Did you enjoy the show?" "Oh, absolutely," Rias answered, arching like a contented cat. "You two seem so adorable. I was tempted to join, but chose to leave you to your little moment. Sister Arya deserves a bit of special attention, anyway." With that, Arya rolled her head enough to blink beneath her rumpled bangs. "As sister," Rias leaned her head to one side, mischievous. "Well, you're older than me, aren't you? And now that we're both Mrs. Moonwalker, I thought it suited." Arya's lips parted, but nothing issued forth. She recalled it all now, how Leon had informed her prior to ravishing her last night that Rias had sent him, that his first wife, his adopted daughter, no less, had given permission. She hadn't said a word then, too humiliated and overwhelmed, but now the information only caused her face to burn hotter. I knew," she whispered, voice shaking. Leon already told me. You sent him last night." Oh my," Rias exclaimed theatrically. "So, you did know, and still let Daddy ravish you like that? Sister Arya, You little minx. I'm proud of you. Leon struggled to suppress a chuckle, and Arya retaliated by lightly punching his shoulder, albeit with more force than her actions suggested. Stop laughing, she grumbled, still half buried under the sheets. You too, young lady Rias. Rias arched a brow. Young lady? Oh dear, if you keep addressing me that way, I'll begin addressing you as Lady Bedroom Squeaks. Arya groaned once more and buried her face deeper into Leon's chest. Leon petted her back gently. You know, Rias only teases those she likes. Exactly, Rias replied happily. And I do like you, Sister Arya. You've always been dutiful, pleasant, and industrious. And to be honest, she slanted a look at Leon. It's about time Daddy saw you the way I always knew he would. Arya looked out again, her blush still hot, but there was appreciation in her eyes. Then Rias rose and stretched, her robe flying as she turned to face the door. Well, I suppose I should leave you two newlyweds to rest. Wouldn't want to overheat poor Sister Arya again so quickly. Leon snickered. That's assuming she cooled off at all. Leon, Arya whispered sternly, punching his side once more, though her lips curled into an involuntary smile. Rias turned to the door, her voice softening. Come to the dining room once you've bathed. Breakfast is hot, and I'll be waiting. Rias stopped at the doorway, glancing back over her shoulder with a smile. And on the table, fresh and beautifully folded for both you. I picked them myself. You might want to wear something before joining me. Leon laughed. You're very considerate, sweetheart. He blew her a showy flying kiss. Rias caught it in midair with a smile and touched 2 fingers to her lips. And you're still my favorite scoundrel, Daddy. Then, with a toss of a waving hand, she emerged, shutting the door softly behind her. Silence again descended on the room. Arya finally released the breath she'd been holding and gazed up at Leon. She's more playful than I expected. She only plays when she's happy, Leon said, running his fingers softly down her back. Then, Leon leaned her chin up, golden eyes locking with hers. You still okay with all of this? Yes, she replied softly, just still overwhelmed. Understandable. He grinned. But I have a solution. with a hot bath. With you. Her eyes went wide. Tea together? Of course, he replied smoothly. We're husband and wife, aren't we? Arya attempted to protest, but the words stuck in her throat. At last, she acquiesced with a slight nod. Oh, okay. More than a bath. Leon stood, raising his arms over his head, muscles rippling under his skin as the sheet that had been wrapped around his waist fell to the floor. The sunlight coming through the window highlighted the hard planes of his body, showing every inch of his well-sculpted physique. Arya couldn't help but look at him, her breath catching in her throat. He spun back to her, his smile mocking, as though he was aware of the effect his body on her. His golden eyes twinkled with mischief that sent her heart pounding. He leaned a little, with predator's elegance, as he reached out for her with his hand. Come, my lady, he smiled, his voice smooth and low. It's bathing time. Arya's heart leaped as Leon scooped her up with ease into his arms, holding her in a princess carry. She gasped, her naked body pressed against his hard chest, and shivers of warmth and longing coursed through her. The feel of his body against hers was addictive, the rough heat of his skin burning her with every slow, sensual movement. Her body was laid bare before him, and even though she'd slept in his arms, this was different, more intimate, more real. Each breath she took seemed to blend with his, their proximity almost too much to handle. As Leon led her to the bathroom, he lost himself in thought. Her bathroom was minuscule compared to his in his chambers, but with her by his side, it felt like the finest room in existence. The rough stone walls, the gleaming wood floor, the huge tub that could hold 2 comfortably easily. Everything appeared to have been designed with the 2 of them in mind. He laid her down in front of bathtub gently. His fingers touched the shape of her back as he moved away, briefly taking in the view of her standing before him, utterly unashamed and exposed. Her violet eyes were wide, still flushed from their earlier teasing, and her lips parted as if to say something, but the words never left her mouth. She lowered herself into the hot water first, exhaling softly as the warmth wrapped around her. Her skin flushed, tension easing slowly from her body as she sank further into the bath, her shoulders easing beneath the water. Leon entered after her, his movements slow and deliberate as he slid in behind her. The tub was big enough for them to both fit comfortably, but they were still so close, too close for any space to exist between them. Water lapped at her skin as Leon came up behind Arya, his chest against her back. His arms came around her, pulling her close, his hands stroking over her soft skin in a gentle, almost worshipful caress. She leaned back into him, her head on his shoulder, her heart pounding in her chest. "Leon," Arya whispered, her voice barely loud enough to be heard over the water. His lips brushed against the back of her neck, the simple gesture sending sparks through her body. His breath was warm against her skin as he nuzzled her softly, taking in the familiar scent of lavender and her own unique fragrance that drove him wild. "Relax, Arya," he murmured, his voice low and coaxing. "I've got you. Just let go." She closed her eyes, allowing herself to melt into him, her hands resting lightly on the sides of the tub. Every inch of her skin seemed to burn where it met his, and she could feel the growing tension between them, subtle but undeniable. She could sense his desire, just as he could feel hers. The gentle sound of the water was the only one that occupied the space between them, their bodies impossibly close, the sensuality of the moment overwhelming. The bath itself was a matter of simplicity, nothing overdone by itself, but with Leon there, wrapping her in his arms, touching her, it seemed as though they were in their own world. Leon's fingers followed the outline of her arm, stopping over her wrist before he picked up her hand, bringing it delicately to his lips. He kissed the palmar surface, then followed along her arm in a trail of soft kisses, his lips warming her skin far more than even his touch had. Arya gasped, curling her fingers in the water as she pushed into him, feeling the warmth of his body against hers. She could feel the sensual tension building between them, and yet there was a tenderness about it, something that made her feel safe, loved, amidst the tempest of desire gathering within her. "Leon," she whispered for the second time, her voice shaking a little. "What are we doing?" "We're bathing," he said gently, his voice thick with affection while he drawing slow circles into her back. "But more than that, we're sharing this moment, Arya. This is ours, just ours." She swallowed hard, but her body settled completely into his arms. The vulnerability in her breath was met with the soft thump of affection in her chest. She spoke not a word, only nodded slightly, allowing herself to drop into the moment. Leon's eyes softened, his hand tracing the curve of her collarbone before he closed his eyes, and in that silence, opened his system panel. He hadn't inspected it last night, because mere Arya yesterday is extremely tempting. Now, the time had come to find out what rewards, abilities, or surprises were in store. And so, the system screen came alive. Ding. Mission. Fuck Arya. Headmaid of house. Objective. Make Arya completely yours. Reward. Scent of arousal, plus 20 black points. Warning. Mission failure will result in the disabling of Touch of Charm. Time limit, 20 days. Status, completed. Would you like to accept your rewards? Y/N. His golden eyes snapped open, focusing on Arya's face, still closed eyes, a serene smile pulling at her lips as she rested her head on his warmth. And he chooses to open his reward. Yes, he mouthed silently. System. Initiating fusion, scent of arousal. Analyzing target physiology. Adjusting hormonal and sensory output. Fusion complete. Scent of arousal. Your body now naturally releases a subtle, habit-forming scent resonant to feminine desire. The scent discreetly provokes emotional and physical desire, leading women to unconsciously perceive you in a good, desirable light. The aroma is distinct in each woman's desires, sweet, familiar, and irresistible. In passing or intimate contact, your presence becomes magnetic, warm, intimate, and impossible to ignore. The effect is passive, permanent, and grows with emotional attachment. Black points, 30. An odd heat coursed through Leon's chest. It was slight, not like a surge of energy, but rather a movement, like some secret portion of him now vibrated in sync with the world. The water in the bath was warmer. Arya's breathing fuller. Arya moved, shifting in his lap, her cheek against his chest. Leon, you smell incredibly nice, suddenly. Her lips lifted into a sleepy smile. Warming, like honey and something that I don't know how to describe. She whispered, her voice so gentle, so dreamy. Warming and safe. It's kind of unfair. Leon laughed softly, brushing his mouth against her purple hair. You're just dreaming things. No, she said with a lazy inhale. I'm not. It's comforting. And she again adjusted herself in his lap. A notification flickered again. Status updated. Name, Leon Moonwalker. Age, 30. Cultivation realm, novice. Race, human. Talent, average. Level, 18 from 9. HP, 100 out of 100. STR, 28/100. AGL, 27/100. VIT, 29/100. STM, 29/100. INT, 59/100. Def, 28 out of 100. Blank points, 60. Skills, Touch of Charm, Eye of Judge, Scent of Arousal. Combat skill, Body Reinforcement. Hera members, Rhys Moonwalker, Arya. Leon's brows lifted. Level 18? I was just scratching by last night on level 9. I overnight nearly double in strength. Just from Screwer? System response. Host has accumulated power through cohabitation with a superior class companion. Arya is present at the mid-phases of the Master Realm. Bodily connection with potent women hastens host's evolution. Leon took a deep breath, his mind reeling with the words of the system ringing in his head. He had already known about the effects of getting intimate with dominant women's system, but this effective is truly unbelievable. His train of thought was interrupted when he felt the gentle pressure of her fingers wrapping around his wrist. She twisted in his lap a bit, now looking at him. Her deep purple eyes scoured his, glowing almost in the gentle candle glow of the bath. Leon, she whispered, her voice a song. Your aura is heavier. You actually did penetrate the novice realm. She looked at him in wonder. The weird, perverse energy of yours exists, huh? Leon smiled, cradling her cheek, his thumb following the gentle curve of her jaw. You doubted me, little Arya, he teased, glint in his eye. Her cheeks flushed a deep crimson. And no, it's unreal. He leaned in, lips against her ear. And yet, the moment I touch you, you shiver. He breathed, his voice like velvet. What does that say? Ah, she gasped, breath catching as he playfully squeezed her soft breast. Leon, don't. Rhys is waiting for us. Leon shifted back a bit, his lips curving in a wicked grin. Okay then, I let you go. But, he said, his voice like silk. Next time, I won't stop until I make you moan louder. Leon could still sense the weight of her body pressed against his, the touch of her branded upon his muscles like a burn. And yet, he did not claim her again. Not because he didn't want to. Hell, every inch of him screamed to pull her close, to lose himself in her warmth one more time, maybe a dozen more. But his body was feeling drained. Even with my level jump, I'm still nowhere near Arya's stamina, he thought, glancing back at her with a teasing smile. He allowed his body to roll with that loose, feline ease, predator, strong, fulfilled. No vulnerability would be displayed, not in Arya's or any future woman in my harem's presence. She could love him, okay, but that did not mean that he wanted her to witness the price. Not. Never. Leon rose, water pouring down his body, muscles flexing under the soft candlelight's glow. His action was fluid, smooth, purposeful. Each step was a performance, a slow unfolding of presence, power, and held desire. He was refreshed, yes, but underneath that, he felt the strength in his arms, the twinge from the night's activity, and the hunger insinuating itself within him. Arya stood too, and the water outlined every contour as if it adored her, sticking to her thighs, breasts, collarbone. Her wet hair stuck to her shoulders like threads of midnight silk, and her eyes were half closed, dreamy but watchful, observing him, and the candlelight making drops into stars. Leon grasped for a towel, wrapping it around her with a gentleness that made her heart skip a beat. She gazed up at him, taken aback by the gentleness in his touch. "You always take care of me. Like this," she breathed. "I always will," he replied, drawing her close for a gentle kiss on her temple. He grabbed another towel for himself, putting it around his waist, and hand in hand, they exited the bath, their hearts full, their spirits lifted, and the burden of the world a little less heavy. Dressing the morning. Steam still clung to their skin as they entered the bedroom, air still warm from their joint bath. Morning sunlight poured through the window in golden light, bathed the room in a sleepy haze. Lavender soap smell lingered delicately between them, gentle, soothing. Leon looked towards a side table by the window and smiled. "Hey, Rias already got our clothes ready," he mentioned matter-of-factly, sauntering over with the towel, still low on his hips. Arya looked where he did. On it were two neatly folded sets of clothes. One, Leon's usual golden-white robe, royal and shining. Next to it, something new, a gown of rich purple silk, with tiny silver threads embroidered on the edges that twinkled like stars pinned on velvet. Her feet stopped. Eyes lingered. "That's not my maid dress," Arya whispered, voice low, uncertain. "So, I don't wear this dress." Leon spun around, towel low on hips, brow creased in confusion. "Why not wear it?" I'm still your maid," she told him, her voice getting smaller, fingers fluttering over the hem of her towel. There was a brief silence, and without a word, Leon moved closer. Then, flick. "Ow!" she squeaked, jumping back as his fingers slapped her forehead. She looked up, wide-eyed. "Leon." He stood, raised brow, feigned anger. "How many times do I need to remind you?" His voice was gentle, although he attempted to be stern. "You're no longer my maid. You're my wife, Arya." He moved closer, his presence warm, commanding, but gentle. "Not just for your loveliness, though you're lovely enough to wear anything," he told her, voice dropping. "It's a statement that you are my equal, not behind me." Arya's heart pounded wildly. Confusion and happiness wrapped around each other like vines of light and darkness. "Wife." He called me his wife again. "He wants me to wear it as his equal?" She glanced at the gown, then at him. Her heart hurt sweetly with emotion. She smiled, slowly. A small, shy but genuine smile. "Okay," she breathed, eyes shining with something between embarrassment and hope. She moved in the direction of the wardrobe, flinging open its heavy doors with firm hands that shook ever so slightly. She took out a pair of purple undergarments, plain silk with beautiful cut. Turning around, she felt his eyes on her back. A warmth crept up her cheeks. "He's looking. No. But he's my husband now. It's all right if he's seeing me, right?" She swallowed, breathing unsteady. Then, with a quiet determination, her fingers touched the knot on her towel. Her face colored, a soft pink spreading across her cheeks. The towel slipped. The cloth dropped in a slow whisper to the floor, exposing her body in full morning radiance. Her creamy skin, flush from the bath, shone softly. Her breasts, soft and full, rose and fell with each breath, pink nipples stiff in the cold air. Her slender waist flowed into gentle hips, thighs smooth and soft, and between them, her womanhood, bare unclad by cloth, trembled slightly under the warmth of his eyes. Leon's breath caught, hardly audible. His eyes, usually so tranquil, now seethed with pent-up hunger. Hunger sparkled behind the gold like sunfire restrained by mere threads. "She's mine," he thought. "My wife, and she's beautiful." But he remained frozen, re-staining, though his knuckles tightened a little where he clutched the towel around his waist. Arya sensed it, his warmth, his eyes, his silence. She blushed deeper. His eyes, they burn like fire on my skin, but it's not shameful anymore. It's warm, comforting. even if it makes my heart beat fast. She stretched back, fastening her bra, her breasts swelling upward into the black silk. The panties followed. The fine fabric curled around her hips as she stepped into them. And then she put on the gown, the purple silk draping over her curves like water, accentuating her elegance, her presence. Her hair, wet still, glimmered as she let it cascade down behind her in loose waves. At her back, Leon had not shifted. She cleared her throat quietly, glancing over her shoulder. He was still gazing at her. "Leon," she whispered, hardly above a breath. "You're staring." His gaze snapped up to hers, and a crooked, wicked grin appeared on his lips. "Blame me," he said, inching closer, voice low and husky. "My wife appears perilously hot at the moment." "El Leon," she squeaked, putting both hands over her face. What are you saying?" She spun away quickly, hair falling to cover her blushing face. But her ears were bright red right down to the tips. Leon laughed, warm and teasing. "Just being honest." She hid her face in her hands. "Why you just tease her." Then she peeked out between her fingers. "Can you please get dressed now?" He grinned even wider. "As you wish, my lady." With one pull, his towel fell. Arya emitted a little, strangled sound and hastily turned around, but not before getting a glimpse of his chiseled body, the V-cut of his hips, and his powerful, long and thick manhood. Her knees quivered a bit, and she cleared her throat. Leon slipped on his robe effortlessly, the golden white material draping over his shoulders, clinging to his body with carefree ease. He drew his black hair back, securing it loosely at the base of his neck. Arya, her face still pink, smoothed out her gown, attempting to steady her pounding heart. They stood before each other. He extended his hand, took hers. Her fingers wrapped into his with ease, as if a remembered dance from another existence. Her eyes locked with his, and in that still, sunny instant, there were no words necessary. Hand in hand, husband and wife walked out into the light, dressed in finery, tied together in love, and prepared to meet whatever the world had waiting. Breakfast of love. The gentle sound of footsteps echoed down the slick marble hallway as Leon and Arya walked hand in hand into the dining room. Arya's fingers remained ensnared in Leon's, warm and constant, but her gaze would fall occasionally to the floor, cheeks flushing slightly. She was lovely in the loose, purple dress Rias had selected, the material flowing around her legs like water. But with each step, her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't accustomed to walking this way, not by her lord, but as his wife. As they approached the wide arch that opened into the sumptuous dining hall, a melodious, familiar voice boomed, laughing and cheekily amused. Well, the newly couple finally gracing me with their presence." Arya jolted, her blush growing stronger. Rhea sat at the formal dining table, legs draped loosely over the other, her scarlet dress clinging to her curves. Her dark scarlet hair fell about her shoulders in waves, contrasting with her harsh, mischievous smile. Her scarlet eyes glowed with amusement, focusing immediately on Arya's frazzled face. "I was beginning to wonder if you two had melted in the bath or simply decided to spend the whole day tangled in each other," she teased, swirling a spoon in her teacup. Arya's blush deepened immediately. We just..." Leon cut in smoothly, smirking. "We almost didn't make it out, to be fair. Someone was very tempting and needing a little more attention." Rias laughed, a deep, musical sound. "Oh, Daddy, always such a gentleman." She rested her chin in her hand as Leon came over and, without apology, stooped to kiss her mouth, a light, comfortable kiss. She returned it with easy professionalism, her fingers stroking his jaw before he let go and claimed the head seat at the table. And she leaned her chin on her hand, smirking. "You smell different this morning, muskier, more addictive." She licked her bottom lip slowly, almost like you've become more additive. Arya stood nearby, fidgeting, until Rias patted the seat beside her with a sly smile. "Come, Sister Arya. Don't hover like a girl caught sneaking out of her lover's bed. Sit with your family." Arya blinked at the term family, then nodded slowly, her voice gentle. Why, yes. Breakfast was already laid out. Warm bread rolls dripping with honey, glazed fruits, poached eggs, and roasted meats. The aroma alone was able to awaken Leon's appetite, particularly after a night of activity that had drained his energy. Rias scooted closer, placing her elbow on the table. Sister Arya, that dress fits you nearly too well. If I hadn't taken the time to make this dress myself, I think you were trying to seduce both Daddy all over again. Arya spit out her soup in surprise. What? I would never. Leon smiled in between spoonfuls. Give her time, Rias. She's still getting used to things. But I wouldn't complain being seduced by her again. Rias fired him a glance, equal measures amused and sensual. Oh, I know you wouldn't, Daddy. Arya attempted to concentrate on her plate, her whole face now a deep crimson. But even in the taunting, the manner in which Rias looked at her, warm and evil all at once, caused something warm brew in her chest, and she'd genuinely feel part of this family. The repartee waltzed through the morning air like sun on water, gentle and radiant. Arya remained mostly silent, her heart skipping a beat with every jesting jab, but the heat in the room, teasing, flirtatious, loving, was something she gradually thawed into. Leon gazed from one to the other. Rias, his daughter and first wife, his sweet red-haired storm. Arya, his recently bound love, reserved yet gradually flowering into something fierce under the silk and stammering. The morning air was charged with flirtation and fire-lamp heat. Under the laughter and banter, something fragile flowered. Acceptance, intimacy, the thin strand of a bond just taking shape. Leon breathed deep, the roasted honey and woman still on his palate. There was peace for the moment. The delicate tinkle of silverware receded as the final bites of breakfast were enjoyed. Morning light streamed through the high dining hall windows, golden and warm, embracing the three at the table in a peaceful radiance. Leon sat back in his chair, arching with a soft creak. All right, I should go to my study and get started. Across the table, Rias lazily swirled her juice, her scarlet eyes glinting with mirth. Daddy, she cooed, why don't you take a day off from work and spend it with your two lovely wives instead? Her voice dropped low, teasing, sensual. Arya almost dropped her spoon. Again, on Rias' remark. Leon laughed, his gaze drifting to Rias with a slow smile. Sweetheart, if I listened to my heart, he whispered, I wouldn't just spend a day with the two of you. I'd imprison the three of us in a room for the rest of our lives and never allow either of you out of my bed. Rias's eyes flashed with heat, her breathing catching as her thighs folded under the table. For heaven's sake, she growled, licking her lips. Do not tease me like that, Daddy. Arya said nothing, her hands tightening on her robe. She wasn't accustomed to these interactions yet, especially not when Rias acted so brazen, so natural. But even in stillness, she didn't glance away. Not at him. Leon stood up from the chair and walked around the table. In one smooth action, he swept Rias up by the waist and enfolded her in his arms. His voice dropped to a low, sensual whisper against the ear. Perhaps I do not have to go to the study, he whispered, his warm breath against her neck. Perhaps I shall spend all day ravaging both my lovelies, until neither one of you can walk. Rias shivered. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she took a slow, deep breath. Her eyes rolled back a little. Gods, that smell. You smell stronger recently. She buried her nose against his collar. More addictive. What are you doing to me, Daddy? Leon smirked. Just being near you. She backed away just far enough to glance up at him, eyes shining. As much as I'd love to be ruined right here against the table, I don't think I, or Sister Arya, could handle you right now, Daddy. Arya's eyes went wide, and her lips quivered slightly. The vision Rias had just created seared in her mind like flame. Her fingers tensed more in her lap. Leon chuckled quietly, releasing Rias with an exaggerated sigh. Tragic, but my lady's will. He overacted a turn, raising his chin like a thespian in a romance novel. Then I will endure the weight of paperwork. Rias laughed, standing with a hip hand. So dramatic, she mocked. Okay, don't pout. Come here, Daddy. He spun around in time for her to grab him by the collar and plant a hard, wet, near sloppy kiss on his mouth. The sound reverberated thinly, the flavor remaining even as they broke apart. There, she panted, voice still warmed. Now go. Be good daddy for once. Leon bowed theatrically. As you command, sweetheart. And then he looked over at Arya, who'd sat quietly by in wonder. Arya, he spoke softly, you like to go with me? Or perhaps you need a bit of rest. Her eyes came up from under the lock of hair in shock. I'll go with you. She babbled quickly, a shade too hastily. He grinned. Then let's go. Their fingers touched naturally. She rose, still in a state of agitation, but firm. Something about being at his side seemed less frightening than before. As they emerged into the archway, Rias's voice called out once more. Wait, Sister Arya. Arya spun around, blinking. Why, yes. Rias approached, eyes flicking over the purple robe that clung to Arya's body. That robe. Doesn't it suit you perfectly, though? Leon's eyebrow arched in puzzlement. Arya nodded slowly. Yes, it's very comfortable. And it's beautiful. Rias's eyes shone. Good. That's what I wanted to hear. She gestured dramatically with her hand. Now go. I've got work to do before I pilfer him back later. Leon and Arya shared a quick look at her odd tone, but neither of them said anything. As they departed, her words hung in the air like perfume. Rias lingered at the door of dining hall a moment longer, keeping an eye on their backs. Then, with a gentle smile, she turned on her heel and went off to her own work, whispers in the sunlight. The hallway lay before her like a gentle dream, bathed in the soft light of early morning. Stained glass windows, towering and somber, cast streaks of rose, amber, and violet over marble floors. All seemed caressed by something holy. Leon walked beside Arya, their hands entwined in peaceful closeness. No words were exchanged, but none were necessary. Their pace was slow, unhurried, every step vibrating a personal rhythm. The peace after a storm, the start of something unspoken yet profound. Arya's hand curled a bit tighter around his. The silence wasn't empty. It felt like it was bearing something unspoken, hanging lightly between them. When they reached the study, Leon released her hand only to push the heavy oak door open. It gave a familiar creak, a sound she'd heard countless times, but today it felt different. Everything did. Warm air met them, sweet with the odor of parchment, ink, and wax, and the flower-scented breeze that came in the window curled and crept in like a spirit of summer. Sunlight streamed across the desk and shelves, golding the edges of papers and playing among half-written notes in gold. Arya moved into the study slowly, as if with reverence. Her gaze scanned the room, past the mahogany desk, the tall bookshelves, the ink pots strewn about. All was as before, and yet she stood still, breathing deeply, the scent of flowers catching in her throat. This study feels different today, she whispered, almost to herself. Leon's brow rose in amusement. Different? How so, my dear? Arya faced him, her voice uncertain, but her eyes firm. Each time I walked into here previously, it was as your maid, your secretary, a servant performing a task. She smiled, gentle and bashful, but now there was another emotion in her eyes. Something more. But today, she paused to let the words settle before concluding, today I come as your wife. Leon's brows shot up in surprised amusement. There was something about the way she'd said wife, hesitant, near wonder, that thawed him. He moved a step closer, his knuckles scraping her cheek. She didn't move away this time. The shield she used to hide behind, shyness, reserve, had disappeared. Well, he murmured, his voice low, gentle. Then make it a habit, my love. This room, this space, this life, it's yours now. For now, and forever. A slight laugh escaped her lips, mere noise. She nodded. Without hesitation, he grasped her hand once more and guided her towards his desk. When he settled into his high-backed chair, she automatically moved to gather the work of the day, collecting scrolls and sealed missives from the side cabinet, where she kept her workings in order. "All right," she started, smoothing one open. Her voice changed. It was utilitarian, direct. The voice he'd grown accustomed to during days of work and routine. "This one's from the Silver City Council," she said, scanning the lines. "They're seeking your sanction on a new infrastructure proposal, widening roads, bridges. There's a second proposal from the Trade Ministry, redirecting caravans through the northern valleys." Leon heard not a single word of it. Not at all. His gaze was on her, not the scroll. The way her lips curled as she read, the small crease between her brows when she focused. Marriage had changed her, rounded her in some areas, but honed her in others. She was brighter than ever, and unmistakably more feminine. He considered. Gods, she was beautiful when she worked. "Little wifey," he broke in, his tone silky and teasing. Arya stuttered in mid-sentence, visibly taken aback by the word wifey. "W what?" He slanted forward slightly, a twinkle in his eyes. "I find it horribly awkward, you standing there, reading all these papers." Her face wrinkled into a frown of puzzlement. "Why you feel horribly awkward? Is anything wrong?" He put on a show of being vexed. "Just a strange pang in my soul, watching my dear wife stand so distant." She glared at him suspiciously and spoke with a sigh. "You're being dramatic again." "I would never," he replied, playing the innocent. She arched an eyebrow and turned, moving toward the chair in front of his desk, the one she'd sat in 100 times before. But Leon arched an eyebrow, watching her begin to turn away. "And where do you think you're going?" She looked back over her shoulder. "You said you didn't like me standing, so I'm sitting. Problem solved. Foolish woman." His voice lowered, playful and full of laughter. And then, in a flash of decision, he slapped his thigh. "This is what I meant. Sit here. More than a bath." Leon stood, raising his arms over his head, muscles rippling under his skin as the sheet that had been wrapped around his waist fell to the floor. The sunlight coming through the window highlighted the hard planes of his body, showing every inch of his well-sculpted physique. Arya couldn't help but look at him, her breath catching in her throat. He spun back to her, his smile mocking, as though he was aware of the effect his body on her. His golden eyes twinkled with mischief that sent her heart pounding. He leaned a little, with predator's elegance, as he reached out for her with his hand. "Come, my lady," he smiled, his voice smooth and low. "It's bathing time." Arya's heart leaped as Leon scooped her up with ease into his arms, holding her in a princess carry. She gasped, her naked body pressed against his hard chest, and shivers of warmth and longing coursed through her. The feel of his body against hers was addictive, the rough heat of his skin burning her with every slow, sensual movement. Her body was laid bare before him, and even though she'd slept in his arms, this was different, more intimate, more real. Each breath she took seemed to blend with his, their proximity almost too much to handle. As Leon led her to the bathroom, he lost himself in thought. Her bathroom was minuscule compared to his in his chambers, but with her by his side, it felt like the finest room in existence. The rough stone walls, the gleaming wood floor, the huge tub that could hold two comfortably easily. Everything appeared to have been designed with the two of them in mind. He laid her down in front of bathtub, gently. His fingers touched the shape of her back as he moved away, briefly taking in a view of her standing before him, utterly unashamed and exposed. Her violet eyes were wide, still flushed from their earlier teasing, and her lips parted as if to say something, but the words never left her mouth. She lowered herself into the hot water first, exhaling softly as the warmth wrapped around her. Her skin flushed, tension easing slowly from her body as she sank further into the bath, her shoulders easing beneath the water. Leon entered after her, his movements slow and deliberate as he slid in behind her. The tub was big enough for them to both fit comfortably, but they were still so close, too close for any space to exist between them. Water lapped at her skin as Leon came up behind Arya, his chest against her back. His arms came around her, pulling her close, his hands stroking over her soft skin in a gentle, almost worshipful caress. She leaned back into him, her head on his shoulder, her heart pounding in her chest. "Leon," Arya whispered, her voice barely loud enough to be heard over the water. His lips brushed against the back of her neck, the simple gesture sending sparks through her body. His breath was warm against her skin as he nuzzled her softly, taking in the familiar scent of lavender and her own unique fragrance that drove him wild. "Relax, Arya," he murmured, his voice low and coaxing. "I've got you. Just let go." She closed her eyes, allowing herself to melt into him, her hands resting lightly on the sides of the tub. Every inch of her skin seemed to burn where it met his, and she could feel the growing tension between them, subtle but undeniable. She could sense his desire, just as he could feel hers. The gentle sound of the water was the only one that occupied the space between them, their bodies impossibly close, the sensuality of the moment overwhelming. The bath itself was a matter of simplicity, nothing overdone by itself, but with Leon there, wrapping her in his arms, touching her. It seemed as though they were in their own world. Leon's fingers followed the outline of her arm, stopping over her wrist before he picked up her hand, bringing it delicately to his lips. He kissed the palmar surface, then followed along her arm in a trail of soft kisses, his lips warming her skin far more than even his touch had. Arya gasped, curling her fingers in the water as she pushed into him, feeling the warmth of his body against hers. She could feel the sensual tension building between them, and yet there was a tenderness about it, something that made her feel safe, loved, amidst the tempest of desire gathering within her. "Leon," she whispered for the second time, her voice shaking a little. "What are we doing?" "We're bathing," he said gently, his voice thick with affection while he drawing slow circles into her back. "But more than that, we're sharing this moment, Arya. This is ours, just ours." She swallowed hard, but her body settled completely into his arms. The vulnerability in her breath was met with the soft thump of affection in her chest. She spoke not a word, only nodded slightly, allowing herself to drop into the moment. Leon's eyes softened, his hand tracing the curve of her collarbone before he closed his eyes, and in that silence, opened his system panel. He hadn't inspected it last night, because mere Arya yesterday is extremely tempting. Now, the time had come to find out what rewards, abilities, or surprises were in store. And so, the system screen came alive. Ding. Mission. Fuck Arya. Head maid of house. Objective. Make Arya completely yours. Reward. Scent of arousal, plus 20 black points. Warning. Mission failure will result in the disabling of Touch of Charm. Time limit, 20 days. Status, completed. Would you like to accept your rewards? Y/N. His golden eyes snapped open, focusing on Arya's face, still closed eyes, a serene smile pulling at her lips as she rested her head on his warmth. And he chooses to open his reward. Yes, he mouthed silently. System. Initiating fusion, scent of arousal. Analyzing target physiology. Adjusting hormonal and sensory output. Fusion complete. Scent of arousal. Your body now naturally releases a subtle, habit-forming scent resonant to feminine desire. The scent discreetly provokes emotional and physical desire, leading women to unconsciously perceive you in a good, desirable light. The aroma is distinct in each woman's desires, sweet, familiar, and irresistible. In passing or intimate contact, your presence becomes magnetic, warm, intimate, and impossible to ignore. The effect is passive, permanent, and grows with emotional attachment. Black points, 30. An odd heat coursed through Leon's chest. It was slight, not like a surge of energy, but rather a movement, like some secret portion of him now vibrated in sync with the world. The water in the bath was warmer. Arya's breathing fuller. Arya moved, shifting in his lap, her cheek against his chest. "Leon, you smell incredibly nice," suddenly. Her lips lifted into a sleepy smile. Warming, like honey and something that I don't know how to describe. She whispered, her voice so gentle, so dreamy. Warming and safe. It's kind of unfair, Leon laughed softly, brushing his mouth against her purple hair. You're just dreaming things. No, she said with a lazy inhale. I'm not. It's comforting. And she again adjusted herself in his lap. A notification flickered again. Status updated. Name, Leon Moonwalker. Age, 30. Cultivation realm, novice. Race, human. Talent, average. Level, 18 from 9. HP, 100 out of 100. STR, 28/100. AGL, 27/100. VIT, 29/100. While waiting, Leon's mind went back to the relationship between Rias and Princess Lyra. Years earlier, when Leon visited the capital, Rias had become great friends with the princess and the daughter of another duke. The three of them, all being around the same age, were inseparable and very close friends during those times. Tsubaki noticed Leon's thoughtful look, her mind momentarily wandering away. A couple of minutes went by before the door creaked open once more. The hush was interrupted by the quiet tread of Arya returning, followed by Rias. Rias swept in with a burst of red hair and attitude. "Daddy, you called, oh." Her eyes fell upon the kneeling knight, and she smiled. "Tsubaki." The knight stood up once more, bowing respectfully. "Lady Rias." "Hey, cut out," Rias complained, flinging an arm. "How many times must I inform you? We have bond, for goodness sake." Tsubaki bestowed on her a small, appreciative smile. Leon snickered under his breath. "Sweetheart, sit down, please. Lady Tsubaki brings a message from the princess herself." Rias inclined her head a little, eyes at once sparkling with interest. She tossed her crimson locks over her shoulder and glided to sit down next to Tsubaki and Arya, who had moved silently back to her seat next to Leon. Her actions were elegant, unstrained, but there was a spark of interest in her every look. Tsubaki breathed in slowly, then began. "The Duke is right. I was dispatched on behalf of Her Highness, Princess Lyra. And what does Lyra want with us this time?" Rias asked, half joking but entirely curious. Tsubaki looked straight ahead. "She wishes for your presence," she said, "for an upcoming ceremony at Moonspire." Rias blinked once. "Oh, that," she said casually, brushing her fingers along her thigh. "We got an invitation a few days ago. It was delivered directly to our estate. We'll be there on time, don't worry." But Tsubaki shook her head softly. "No, Miss Rias, I think you've misunderstood." Rias hesitated, her furrowed brow deepening. She looked at Leon, who turned his full gaze to Tsubaki, his face calmly inquiring. "Misunderstood?" she asked. Tsubaki crossed her hands in her lap and spoke quietly. "The princess does not merely invite your presence at the event. She invites you to arrive before the event. She wants her closest friends, particularly you, to be with her in advance. She wants your presence by her side for the days before the ceremony." Rias was quiet. "Oh," she whispered. "You're saying I have to leave for the capital early?" Tsubaki nodded once. "Yes, if it's possible, tomorrow at the latest." Rias's eyes fell to the desk. For a long time, she didn't say anything. Her fingers tapped once on her knee, consideration. Then, as if compelled by habit, she glanced towards Leon. Her eyes questioned a question her lips couldn't ask. "What am I to do?" But Leon just smiled, soft and warm, the way only he could. "It's your decision, sweetheart," he said softly. "Not mine." Her throat constricted. Of course, it was her decision. But the reality was, her heart was conflicted. Lyra was her best friend. Of course, she'd go if she was required. But she snatched a fleeting glance in Arya's direction, then to Leon. Her relationship, her and her daddy's, was now finally flowering into something more, into something holy. They had only just started to share life not as father and daughter solely, but as man and woman, as husband and wife. She did not want to depart, just as that area of his heart was at last opening up. She started tentatively, having no idea what she even wished to say. But then, "Miss Rias." Tsubaki's voice was soft this time. Rias glanced up. The knight dipped into her armor and produced a sealed letter, crisp folding and tied in dark violet wax, embossed with the crescent moon of Moonspire. "The princess told me to give this to you," she said. "She told me it might assist you in your decision. But you, and only you, are to read it." Rias did it slowly, furrowing her brows. The seal was clearly royal. She opened it with a tiny snap, unfolded the parchment, and started reading. The room was quiet for a moment. Tsubaki didn't move. Leon observed Rias intently, seeing how her face gradually hardened, her lips compressing, her scarlet eyes turning darker. Her hold on the parchment became taut. Then, she clenched her teeth. "I'm going," she said flatly, voice lower than usual. With Tsubaki. The moment she spoke, the letter in her hands sparked suddenly, catching flame at its edges. Within seconds, it burned to ash in her palms and vanished, leaving behind nothing but a curl of smoke. Leon's eyes narrowed slightly. That wasn't normal. A magic burn letter? Only the most personal royal communications were sealed so, intended to be read only once and never spoken of again. Whatever Lyra had written was intended for Rias's eyes only. Tsubaki nodded beside her, as if the decision had been a foregone one. "Understood, Miss Rias." She rose, her armor gently clinking with movement, and bowed deeply to Leon. "Then I shall be off. My business here is done." But before she could move, "Wait," Rias said suddenly. Tsubaki paused, straightened, and looked at her. "Tell me," Rias asked, "did Mia also receive a request from Lyra?" Tsubaki nodded. "Yes, Miss Rias. Lady Mia has also been summoned." Rias gave a thoughtful nod. "Then you'll be passing through the Starlight Duchy on your way back to the capital, right?" "Yes." "Then come here tonight. Tomorrow, I'll accompany you to Mia's mansion, and we'll both visit Moonspire together." Tsubaki hesitated for a moment, eyes darting between Rias and Leon. Then she bowed her head. "As you wish, Miss Rias." A moment passed. Then she turned back to Leon again. "Lord Duke, might I intrude upon your hospitality for the evening?" Leon, the ever-polite host, smiled warmly. "Naturally, Miss Tsubaki. You're welcome in this mansion at any time. Rest as long as you want." That made her blush just a little, but noticeably. Arya noticed. So did Rias. Neither said anything. Leon looked over at Rias. "Sweetheart," he said with a wink, "would you be so kind as to ready our guest room?" Rias smiled, half warmly, half playfully. "Of course, Daddy." She rose, the long red hair cascading down her back in a velvet curtain. "Come along, Tsubaki. I'll take you to your room. We'll get you some clean clothes, too. You've been on horseback all day, haven't you?" Tsubaki executed a slight bow to Leon and Arya. "Thank you, Lord Duke." Arya merely nodded, a slight, sympathetic smile on her lips. Then, without another word, the two women departed from the study together. Rias in the lead, her feet light, with Tsubaki following in silent dignity. The door closed behind them with a quiet click, leaving Leon and Arya alone once more, the faint aroma of parchment and armor still in the air. Leon settled back in his chair with a contemplative expression, fingers steepled under his chin. Another summons. Another royal strand in this burgeoning tapestry. He glanced toward the door once again before plunged into his thought. Dinner with guest. The heavy study doors closed softly behind Rias and Tsubaki, shutting the room up in warmth, quiet intimacy. Leon relaxed slightly in his chair, extending his arms for a moment before resuming his concentration on the stack of papers still claiming his attention. Arya, not being asked, slid neatly onto his lap. He gave her a swift, laughing glance, but did not speak. Instead, his arms reflexively went around her waist, holding her in as he got back to his work. And the hours passed. Arya reads each document into quiet attention, her voice a soft but stern strand running through the thick hush of the room. Leon listened, making quick corrections, signing letters, issuing orders, all with her sitting on his lap like a living weight. The afternoon unspooled gradually, and as the sun sank lower in the sky, a warm golden light filled the study. It ran out onto the buff floors and up the walls, bathing the shelves of books and parchment in soft orange and honey tones. The somber weight of obligation gradually yielded to something more gradual, more languorous, as evening enveloped them. Finally, signing the last scroll with a soft breath, he whispered, "That's enough for today." Arya let out with him, exhaling, sensing the tightness of the day release at last from her chest. "Okay, Leon," his name on her lips like a whisper. Safe, peaceful. But before she could, Leon's arms wrapped around her waist tightly, holding her back. "Where do you think you're going, Arya?" he asked, his voice low and teasing. She raised an eyebrow, laughing. "Leon, your job's done. That implies we leave the study, yes?" "I know," he whispered, nuzzling the side of her neck. But, she repeated, voice wary. He smiled against her skin. "I've been a good husband. Focused. Responsible. Don't I deserve a small reward for my diligence?" Before she could speak, both hands moved up, firm but teasing. They cradled her breasts with a gentle squeeze that had her arching slightly, a soft moan escaping her lips against her will. She exhaled a small, breathless moan. "Leon, what are you doing?" "Loving my wife," he answered smoothly. She flushed red. He kissed her neck. Light, teasing kisses that moved up her neck. Then he leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a husky whisper only she could hear. "I was very patient today. Very diligent." He ran the tip of his nose along the edge of her ear. "Don't you think I deserve a good reward? Perhaps one I can taste?" And then, out of the blue, his lips captured hers. It wasn't soft, it was deep, hungry. His tongue invited hers, inviting her into a wet, sensual kiss that left them both panting. Their mouths danced together, slow but ravenous, tongues twisting with increasing heat. When they finally parted, a gossamer bridge of saliva held their lips together. Her chest was heaving. So was his. "You are beyond belief sexy when your face gets like that." Leon breathed into her mouth. Half laughed, half panting. "Stop teasing me. Let's go." Hard swallow, half-closed eyes, and breathed, "Stop teasing." "Not teasing," he told her, his grin wider. Admiring. It took a concerted effort, but she edged off his lap, standing suddenly, even if her legs trembled a bit still. She smoothed out her gown with both hands, struggling to compose. Leon sat back in his chair, observing her with admiration. She flashed him a look, part flustered, part fond. He stood as well, smoothing out his robe. Then he held out his hand. He observed with that wicked grin. "Now let's go." She accepted his hand with a snort, but her fingers clamped his a little harder. As the two stepped out of the study, they were met by the figure of a sweet-looking maid standing politely in the doorway. Her cheeks flushed a gentle pink as she heard voice from study, and she bowed hastily. "Greetings, Lord Duke." "Greetings, lady." Arya stopped, eyebrow raised. "Lady." She cocked her head, recognizing the child. It was Lillian, one of the older housemaids, one who had always addressed her as Miss before. "Why are you calling me lady now?" Arya asked softly. The maid stiffened. "It is the command of young Miss Rias. She told us that from today on, all the servants are to call you properly Lady Arya, and regard you as the official lady of the house." Arya blinked, taken aback. "Rias said that," she said with a nod. "Okay, then. Thank you." Leon laughed softly to the side of her, obviously reveling in the shock. "My little demon works good. That deserves a treat later," he considered. Arya nodded ever so slightly, still looking a bit flustered. "Oh, okay then. But why were you standing here?" The maid cleared her throat politely. "Young Miss Rias also asked me to deliver a message to you as soon as you had finished with the study." Arya tipped her head to the side. "And what is that message?" The maid blushed again, stealing a quick glance at Leon. "Miss Rias has arranged for all your belongings to be moved to the Lord's chamber. You're no longer to use your old room." Her words were, "She's his wife. She belongs by his side now." Leon gave a satisfied nod. Arya looked stunned. What?" "But," the maid held up her hands quickly. "I was told to say this too. If Lady Arya tries to argue, she is to close her mouth and follow instructions." Arya opened her mouth, then promptly shut it. "Fine," she said finally, and Leon chuckled under his breath. "Thank you, Lillian," Leon said with a nod. "You may go." The maid bowed again, then darted away, snatching one final bashful look at Leon on the way. Arya was still in stunned silence when Leon leaned in and whispered, "Don't think too hard, love. Come on." He pulled on her hand, and they went together into the master chambers. It was an odd feeling, a lifetime of silent affection and secret love, all officially recognized. Public. Official. When they arrived at his room, their room now, Leon handed over a towel. "Freshen up before dinner." Inside, Leon invited her to let her freshen up before dinner. She nodded, still bursting with 1,000 little feelings. Later, when both of them got dressed and awake, a light knock sounded on the chamber door. "Lord Duke," was called by the voice of yet another maid. "Dinner is served. Young Miss Rias and Lady Tsubaki are waiting for you and Lady Arya in the dining room." Leon glared at Arya and then smiled. "Shall we, Lady Moonwalker?" She reddened once again, but she smiled back as well. "Let's go, Leon." Hand in hand, they ventured into the night together. As they stepped into the dining room, they were met by the vision of a long, gleaming table covered in deep violet and silver, the colors of their family. The room was softly lit, the golden light casting a warm glow upon the refined room. Two women sat close to the middle, Rias and Tsubaki, talking in hushed tones. Tsubaki no longer stood in her immaculate armor. Instead, she donned a flowing white robe that fell smoothly on her resilient yet refined form. Her jet-black hair, loose now, flowed down the length of her back like silk, providing an exquisite contrast against her robe and porcelain complexion. Her obsidian eyes, peaceful yet watchful, were less rigid in this instance, more human, less the unbreakable night. Rias, ever vibrant, wore a crimson evening dress that mirrored her fiery hair and the glint in her eyes. The two chatted lightly, discussing a shared memory from the capital, something about Lyra's old pet falcon that once attacked a servant's wig by mistake, until footsteps echoed from the hall. Their conversation stopped as Arya and Leon entered together. "Daddy!" Rhea stood with a beaming smile. "Sister Arya, you're finally here." Tsubaki stood up immediately, bowing slightly toward Leon. "Lord Duke." Leon waved a hand with a soft but firm smile. "Miss Tsubaki, take it easy. You don't need to greet me every time we cross paths." Tsubaki blinked, lips parting slightly as if to object, but then paused. "I thank you for your courtesy," Leon said, "but I don't much care for such niceties under my own roof. We're having dinner together, not conducting a war council. Please, let's make it easy." There was something in the way he spoke, kind, straightforward, human, not as a duke, but as a man who prized simplicity over form. Tsubaki could feel a slight heat flower in her chest. "As you please," she replied, her voice low but genuine. Rhea smiled from beside her. "Daddy's right. He dislikes the formal one. Makes him irritable." Leon snickered under his breath. "Just so." Tsubaki smiled slightly as she resumed her seat. "Very well, Lord Leon." Leon sat at the head of the table, and Arya sat to his right. Tsubaki, across from Arya, couldn't help but look at her. For years, she'd known Arya only as the head maid of the manor, strict, elegant, dutiful. And now, sitting at the table, next to the Duke, being treated as his equal, there was something not quite right. But it wasn't something she needed to question. Just then, the doors opened and a pair of maids entered, each carrying large, ornate trays. The scent of roasted herbs and spices filled the room instantly. This evening's supper was an impressive feast, obviously put together with added special attention to the visitor. Roast pheasant in honey glaze and wild herb garnishes, steaming loaves of just-baked bread, heaped bowls of cooked rice spiced with mushroom slices and shaving of truffle, buttered leaf greens, and a hearty stew filled with root vegetables at tender stage and venison were presented before them. A cold moonblossom wine was opened and poured over crystal glasses for all. Leon faced Tsubaki after sipping some wine. "Tell me," he said, "are you at ease here? All to your taste." She gazed back at him, taken aback by the personal inquiry. "Yes, very much." He nodded. "Good. I want you to be comfortable." This house, too, is your house tonight. And during dinner, Leon inquired about capital situation and upcoming ceremony. And she provides answer of his question as Rias and Arya finish eating their food, listing both words. Finally, after the plates had been cleared and wine glasses drained, Tsubaki rose from her seat and bowed, not quite so stiffly this time. Thank you for the dinner, Lord Duke. It was lovely. Leon flipped a hand away. No more thanks, please. You're a guest. Just sit back and enjoy yourself. Her breath came out, almost sounding like a chuckle, but only a nod rewarded him. Then I rest. Young Miss Rias, she addressed the redhead, we ride with dawn. Be ready at dawn's first light. Rias rose, also nodding in a smile. I will. Don't worry, I'm a noble, not a slug. Tsubaki indulged in one final small smile before bowing slightly once more. Then good night. She headed for the door. Leon motioned to one of the maids standing nearby, who promptly stepped forward and escorted Tsubaki in silence to her room. Once the doors closed behind her, only the three of them were left. Once the door had closed behind them, only three were left. Leon exhaled a deep breath, rolling his neck. Okay, you two. Early to bed now. We'll be rising early tomorrow. Both women nodded. Rias yawned softly. Yeah, you're right. Early to bed and early to rise. Arya just stood up, already walking beside Leon quietly. With nothing further to be said, the three departed the dining room as one, entering the halls that would soon bear new tales, new goodbyes, and the first hints of change. The silence of the corridor. The hush of the passageway appeared to grow deeper as the three entered Leon's private rooms. Rias hummed ahead of them, her humming soft and soothing, while Leon and Arya trailed behind them, fingers touching lightly, an unspoken closeness passing between them. Leon closed the door to his room open and beckoned him in. As both women crossed into the room, he shut the door behind them with a faint click, the fire from the hearth dancing warmly along the stone walls. As the weighty door closed, Leon spun around with a smile and flung out his arms. My lovely wifeys, he murmured in a low, joking voice. He drew both of them into a loose hug, his voice vibrating softly against their ears. So, what do you desire tonight? My love? My warmth? Or my mischief? Rias threw her head back, her laughter sparkling in her blood-red eyes. All of the above is tempting to hell. She provoked, her voice dripping with teasing challenge. Arya, her face cuddled up against his chest, peered up between her lashes, voice a mere whisper. Let's get some sleep early tonight. We leave at dawn. And her cheeks flushed as she hesitated, then pushed the words out in a bare whisper. I'm still sore from last night. Leon's arms tightened around her instinctively, a sharp pang of guilt stabbing through him. His heart thudded hard against his ribs. Memories from the previous night, his roughness, his hunger, flashed vividly in his mind. His voice dropped with regret. Sorry about that. I lost control. Arya looked up at him, eyes soft and reassuring. It's okay, she said with a small smile. It was intense, but I'm enjoying and I'm all right. But just tired. Rias buried her cheek in his shoulder, releasing a happy sigh. I enjoyed being ravished as well, Daddy, she purred wickedly, a sly smile playing on her lips. But tonight, I just want to feel you. Warm, close. That's all I need. Leon gave a low laugh, the heat rising within his chest on the verge of spilling over. That, he said, planting a kiss on top of Rias's head, I can definitely do. He led them to the bed. Sheets were newly changed, the room still having a whiff of the roses and sandalwood. Leon stretched out in the middle, arms wide open. Without a single moment's thought, both women snuggled up beside him, Arya to his right, Rias to his left. He drew the blanket up over them all, his arm around each of the women. Their bodies molded against his, soft and warm. Rias shifted slightly, her voice a bit playful. Daddy. Yes, sweetheart, he answered, brushing his fingers through her hair softly. She tilted her head slightly. What do you think about Tsubaki? Leon blinked, a bit surprised. What do I think? Yes, Rias said, a smile pulling at her lips. Tell me, what do you really think? Leon laughed nervously. Well, She's a great warrior. Loyal. Beautiful. Disciplined. Hot too, I guess. Wait, Rias interrupted, flashing a cunning smile. Let me reword. Would you like her in your harem? Leon had a strangled laugh, not sure whether he should be outraged or amused. He looked hastily at Arya, only to see her gazing at him in a contemplative one. He swallowed. I mean, I am a man, and a noble, he replied cautiously, and having gorgeous women in my harem is virtually my birthright. Rias laughed hard. Oh gods, Daddy, you are such a womanizer. Arya sighed quietly, and completely shameless. Leon made a face. So what? You two adore this shameless, womanizing man. Both women giggled and snuggled up closer. Leon smiled, brushing their hair with slow, soothing strokes. Then, Rias's voice fell to a whisper against his chest, quivering and low. I'll miss you, Daddy. He could feel her voice as a quiver across his skin. He wrapped her closer. Sweetheart, it's only for a few weeks. Then, I'm also come capital for ceremony. I know, she whispered, but I still miss you already. Arya sat silently, hearing their conversation with gentle eyes. Leon gazed down, his fingers stroking lightly her hair. A thought crossed his mind, and he spoke in soft voice. Then, you don't have to go, he murmured. Stay. Rias released a soft, bitter laugh. I wish, but if I miss this, it'll cause trouble. Bad ones than you'd want to handle, Daddy. He arched an eyebrow. Something wasn't right. His mind went back to the letter, the one that sent by Princess to her, stamped with the royal seal. He recalled how her face had altered upon reading it. He inquired softly, Rias, what did the princess say to you? Rias hesitated, then looked up with a smile too wicked. It's a secret, Daddy. His eyes grew narrowed playfully. You know there are no secrets between us. She winked. I know, but this one, I'm not telling. He sighed, resting his head back on the pillow. Stubborn little imp. Guilty as charged, she whispered. Before he could push further, Arya shifted and spoke up softly. All right, you two. Enough. We need to sleep. We leave early, remember? Leon and Rias shared a look, and then both grinned together. Yes, Lady Arya Moonwalker. They chimed in unison. Arya rolled her eyes, but a small flush spread across her cheeks. You two are impossible, she grumbled, snuggle into his arm and raising the blanket to her chin. Soft laughter filled the room, warm and rich. Leon moved slightly, not wanting to disturb the serenity of the two women resting against him. His heart already full, he leaned over to Arya first, placing a slow, feather-like kiss against her forehead. His lips pausing for the beat of one heartbeat. His mouth relished the fragile warmth of her skin. Good night, sweetheart, he said softly, his voice low and filled with love. Arya's eyes fluttered half open, and a soft smile curled her lips. Her hand rested on his chest, lightly. Good night, dear, she whispered, her voice dreamy and gentle. Leon smiled warmly. Then he rolled carefully to the other side, toward Rias, who was already curling up against him. He cupped the back of Rias's head with one big hand and kissed the soft spot just behind her temple, soft, lingering, full of unspoken love. You too. Good night, sweetheart, he breathed against her hair. Rias let out a soft, contented sound, lips grazing a smile against the skin of his collarbone. Good night, Daddy, she breathed drowsily. He settled back into the pillows, draping them around him. Both women snuggled into him, secure within the embrace of his arms. He shut his eyes, his breathing matching theirs slow, steady. In that delicate, beautiful instant, Leon believed he could sense it, the beat of love, belonging, and complete peace. And at last, sleep swept them away, side by side, beneath the fading moons. The next morning, the three woke while the sky was still dark, the faintest hints of dawn just a whisper against the horizon. The air was crisp, carrying the coolness of night clinging to its last moments. And beyond the window, two pale moons clung faintly to the sky, ghostly memories refusing to die in the dawn. Leon woke up first, sensing the heat of Rias wrapped against his left side and Arya's lean body lying softly against his right. He didn't move for a moment. He simply lay there, inhaling the silence, allowing the peace of their shared presence to settle in his chest. Later, Rias opened her eyes, exhaling softly as she snuggled closer. "Morning, Daddy." "Good morning, sweetheart," he answered, stroking a tendril of her red hair from her cheek. Aria's eyes opened a heartbeat after. "We need to get ready," she murmured, already getting out of bed. The three of them harmonized in silent habit, washing, dressing, and moving into their respective roles again. When they emerged outside the large mansion, the world was held back between evening and dawn. A gentle chill caressed their skin, and in the profound indigo blue of the sky, two silver moons still hovered, faint, ghostly, as if they did not wish to disappear. Gradually, a soft golden light started spreading over the east, staining the black canvas with promises of warmth and light. A cool breeze blew the banners, and below, sentries stood formed in line. Guards at the gates straightway stiffened and bent low in obeisance as the three walked out, their shadows majestic against the dawn light. In the cobbled courtyard below, a smart carriage was waiting, cleaned until it shone. Sleek, disciplined horses pawed the ground with impatience, and a small unit of guards, selected by Arya herself, were on standby. Arya had picked out the best among them personally to guarantee Ria's security along the journey. And to top it all, Tsubaki, herself an experienced master realm cultivator, would ride along with her. With both Rias and Tsubaki making the trip, any genuine danger was but a remote concern. Tsubaki waited by the carriage. Once more, she wore her shining silver armor, the morning sun reflecting off the highly polished plates of her armor, giving her a semblance of beauty she might have acquired from the hand of a god. Her black hair fell loosely down her back, and obsidian eyes, keen and bright, turned to see the three coming towards her. "Good morning, Lord Leon." "Miss Rias," she had said respectfully, and then turned her head to add flatly, "Morning, Arya." Tsubaki was still in the dark, still addressing Arya as Arya by name, not knowing she had now become his wife. The three approached, greeting back her warmly. Leon inquired next, "Are all preparations in order, Miss Tsubaki?" "Yes, Duke Lord. We stand ready to leave," she replied with sharp politeness, arms crossed behind her back. "Good," Leon said. He moved forward, then bowed low, not deeply, but enough that she was caught off guard. "Please, take care of my sweetheart when she's in the capital." Tsubaki stood straight away, surprised when she noticed the Duke, a man so high-ranking in position, lower his head slightly towards her in a bow. Her eyes grew wide with alarm. She took a step back as if stung. Please, don't bow, Lord Leon," she hurried to say, alarm creeping into her voice. "Please don't bow in front of mere knight like me." Leon stopped in mid-bow, smiled quietly, and gazed in her wide, startled black eyes. Smiling warmly, he nodded and adjusted his posture. "All right then, Miss Tsubaki. But still, take care of my daughter." His voice grew deeper. "And take care of yourself, too." Tsubaki could feel her heart beat heavily against her ribs. She bowed deeply, finding no fitting words under his kind yet mighty stare. But Tsubaki nodded slowly, pulling herself back together. "I will, with all my might." Ria sat there in silence, her heart tugged in two. Sweetness opened up within her seeing Leon bow, seeing how far her daddy would go for her. But with that sweetness came a sting, because to her daddy is her heaven, and heaven never bows. She did not say anything, just file that feeling away. But she said nothing aloud. Only her heart ached with both sweet and pain. Arya, as ever, remained expressionless, yet something softened briefly in her eyes. Tsubaki then turned to Rias. "Miss Rias, shall we?" Rias nodded, then turned quickly and walked into Leon's arms without hesitation. She hugged him tightly, burying her face in his chest. "I'll miss you, Daddy." Leon's arms wrapped around her protectively, hands stroking her back with soft, rhythmic calm. "And I'll miss you too," he said, voice low and full. "But don't worry, I'll be in Moonspire soon. The ceremony won't happen without me stealing the spotlight." She giggled softly, even as her throat tightened. "Promise?" He smiled against her hair. Promise. When she finally pulled away, Leon leaned down little and kissed her forehead, a tender, pure kiss without any of his usual playful teasing. Only the undiluted love of father and husband. Rias giggled softly, the touch warming her from inside, then turned and walked to Arya, arms opening again. "Sister Arya," she whispered. "I'll miss you too." Arya hugged her silently, arms holding the younger girl gently around the waist. "I will miss you too, Rias." When they parted, Rias hugged close and whispered into Arya's ear, between them only. "When I'm not with Daddy," she whispered with a grin, "you'll have to fight alone at night. Or find someone who can help share that burden with you, otherwise you completely ruined by him." Arya blushed, but put her face into a look of silent serenity. "You've been teasing me a lot these days," she said, playfully pinching Rias's cheek. "And also you've become more shameless," Arya said with a little huff. "Sorry, Sister Arya. I won't do it again," Rias apologized with a laugh, making a show of rubbing her cheeks. "Please don't make me cry, or else my beauty will be ruined." Leon and Tsubaki, standing a few steps behind, watched with confused amusement. They hadn't overheard the whispered conversation, but the exchange between the women was clearly rife with subtleties they couldn't decipher. Then Rias winked at Arya once more and spoke teasingly, "But I'm serious. Find someone for Daddy, otherwise you own wise." Arya's eyes grew slightly wide. When did this little girl become so shameless? She wondered, embarrassed, sneaking a glance at Leon, who was staring curiously at the two of them. She breathed in inwardly. Father and daughter. Both always tease me. Ria spun around and walked towards the carriage, calling back, "Let's go, Tsubaki." Tsubaki nodded and headed towards the carriage, but Ria spun around once more. "Oh, Daddy," she shouted. "When you arrive at the capital, I'll have presents in store for you." Leon's eyebrow shot up. "Presents," she smiled, already getting into the carriage. "In return, do something for me too." And she vanished inside. Leon stood there, blinking as the carriage doors shut. "What was that all about?" he muttered. Tsubaki appeared bewildered at Ria's comment, but she put aside the thought and started to walk behind Rias in carriage, but hesitated at gate. She turned around, bowed again. "Thank you once more for your hospitality, Lord Leon. I bid you farewell now." Leon nodded, his face sincere. "Travel well, Miss Tsubaki, and take care of my daughter. And yourself." Tsubaki felt her heart beat faster again, but she bowed deeper. "I will." And she straightened and boarded the carriage. The door closed, the horses snorted, and the carriage began to move, the guards riding alongside in neat formation. Leon and Arya stood side by side at the gate, watching the carriage until it disappeared down the winding path, swallowed gradually by the brilliant rise of the sun. The day had started, but a part of Leon's heart had departed with that carriage. Chapter 41, Shifting Tides of Life. The carriage had disappeared down the curving road, engulfed by distance, and Leon stood still, his eyes resting on the place where it was gone. The sun had just started to rise, and the long shadows crept across the courtyard as the warm, golden light spread over the big mansion. The coolness of the night still lingered in the morning air, but there was a faint promise of heat in the wind. Leon exhaled slowly, his fingers stroking the edge of his jaw contemplatively. "Now, my temptress daughter is no longer here," he whispered with a small laugh, his tone infused with love and a hint of sorrow. Arya stood by him, her gaze after the carriage until it was out of sight. She nodded softly, understanding. Her own face was reflective, a little wistful, as if she too felt the loss of the younger woman. Leon turned to her, and suddenly his arm wrapped about her waist, drawing her into his side. "Leon!" Arya exclaimed, her voice filled with shock, her body twitching minutely as she pushed against him, the sudden motion surprising her. She hadn't anticipated it, certainly not in the presence of the guards still on duty, or the maid standing quietly a little way away. Her heart missed a beat, and a flush of warmth spread across her cheeks. "What are you doing?" she whispered, voice a little more subdued than normal. betraying the embarrassment she felt at the surprise show of affection. Leon chuckled deeply, his lips brushing against her ear as he held her against him. "What does it look like, dear?" His tone was light, but there was an undercurrent of affection that made her heart flutter. "I'm hugging my wife. What's the harm?" Her cheeks turned an even brighter red, and she looked around hastily at the other staff members still lingering by the gates, as if expecting someone to see this little private moment. But the guards, the maids, Arya muttered, glancing from Leon to the others at the gate, a bit uncertain. What will they think? Leon's grip around her waist tightened slightly, drawing her in just a little closer. He smiled down at her with a playful glint in his eyes. "So what?" he said, almost casually. "Let them think what they like. I'm not shy about showing love to my wife." Arya blinked, still embarrassed but also trapped in the heat of his touch. She moved slightly in his arms, attempting to move away, though her body was resistant to releasing him. "You only tease me, don't you?" "Always teasing," she whispered, her voice little more than a breath, as she gazed up at him through half-lowered lashes. Leon's smile grew broader, his chest expanding at seeing her. "Perhaps I do," he replied quietly, his thumb caressing the edge of her waist. "But you can't lie and say you don't enjoy it." There was a gentle but teasing note in his voice, and love was evident in his eyes. Arya bit her lip, her blush deepening, but there was a softness in her gaze that made the teasing feel almost comforting. "I do love it, but still. Let me go, Leon. People will think we're shameless couple." She trailed off, not quite finishing the sentence. Leon laughed softly, his laughter rich and warm, and there was no mistaking the deep affection in his voice as he tightened his hold around her waist. "What? You're my wife. There's nothing wrong with me holding you." He leaned in closer, brushing his lips against the side of her forehead. "I'm not doing anything to be ashamed of." Arya could feel the heat of his words, and her body eased a bit more, although her cheeks remained flushed. She allowed herself to sink into him for a moment, enjoying the sensation of being held by him. There was an odd sense of comfort in his arms, a reassurance that made everything seem right. With a tiny, hardly perceptible sigh, she nodded her head against his chest. "You could be subtler, you know," she said softly, though her words were not imbued with much strength. She couldn't truly disagree with the manner in which he treated her. Safe, cherished, loved. Leon smiled gently, his heart overflowing with her gentle words. "Subtlety doesn't come naturally to me when it's you, Arya," he replied, his voice warm and genuine. "I'll never apologize for letting you feel loved." They strode side by side in silence, the tread of their footsteps filling the still air. Leon's thoughts, however, weren't quite calm. As they walked through the corridors of the mansion, Leon couldn't help but savor the sensation of Arya's soft body against him, the aroma of her hair, the rhythm of her soft breathing. It was like he could almost get lost in this moment, in the warmth of her, in the serenity that enveloped them. This was his new existence, one he would defend with every fiber in his being. But as they walked, his thoughts went to other things, things darker, thoughts of the obstacles that were ahead. He breathed softly, enough for Arya to catch it. He knew that this new life would not be free of troubles. It was like a rose, lovely, soothing, scented, but with a thorny stem that could cut at any moment. He had so much to guard now, his wives, his future, his new lovely life. It wasn't romance or luxury anymore, though. It was to keep them safe, happy, and secure. He felt that urge burning inside of him, the urge to guard what he loved. And then there was more. Leon's thoughts went to his fighting methods. His cultivation had fallen to the mortal world, and he was now newly become novice. He had depended too much on the system, purchasing skills and studying theories. But now he realized that he needed hands-on experience. If he was going to really protect what he cared about, he had to be stronger. He couldn't depend on his system forever. If he remained average, if he didn't challenge himself, then someday he could fail to defend those he loved. And that failure would cost him everything. His arm around Arya's waist constricted a little at the thought. His mind whirled with plans, with the knowledge that his future hung in the balance of his potential to develop, to struggle, and to defend. Arya picked up on the change in his energy, but she remained silent. She merely let herself melt further into his arms, her body pressed against his muscles under the gentle folds of his clothing. There was no need to ask. She knew it, the heavy weight of his thoughts. She leaned in a little closer to him, reassured by his proximity. When they arrived at the door to his study, Leon released her just enough to open it with one hand, moving with fluid ease. As soon as she entered, Arya stood in the center of the room, somewhat bewildered. "Leon," she inquired, her tone filled with curiosity, "why do we go to your study so early? We have a lot of time before we begin our work." Leon smiled at her comment, a glint of mischief dancing in his eyes. "Well, dear," he said softly, his voice rich with affection, "I thought I'd get some work out of the way early today." She raised an eyebrow, clearly puzzled. "What kind of work?" she asked. Leon laughed, reclining in his chair with a relaxed smile. "Well, you see," he started, his voice adopting a more serious tone, "my cultivation fell to the mortal world, and recently I become novice, and I feel I ignore my training." A twinkle appeared in his eyes as he looked at her. "So, I want to train, become accustomed to my power once more. And how better to practice than with you?" Arya blinked, her face flushing as the truth sank in. "You want to practice with me?" she asked in astonished voice. Leon nodded, his eyes becoming a mite more intense. "Yes, I need to be sharp, more skilled on my realm and power. And you, my dear one, are just the right fit for this." He leaned over a little way, his words falling to a whisper. "I trust in you to guide me to improving." Arya experienced a small thrill of expectation pass through her as she nodded, comprehending the gravity of what he was telling her. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. With that, Leon sat back in his chair, and Arya walked over to his desk, collecting the papers she knew he would require for the day's work. But in doing so, she caught him off guard by sitting on his lap, settling herself into his arms comfortably. Leon froze for a moment, his eyes widening in shock at her boldness. But then his arm instinctively tightened around her waist, pulling her closer as he whispered, "Now you're acting like a proper wifey." Arya's cheeks turned bright red, but she managed a small smile. "I am," she said softly, her voice playful yet still holding that hint of embarrassment. But then she added in a mock-serious voice, "Now, no more teasing. Let's get to work." Her words were breezy, but there was a hint of a playful challenge in her voice. Leon smiled, his lips curving into a smirk as he pressed a soft kiss to the nape of her neck. Arya shivered a little at the touch, her body responding to his nearness in ways she hadn't anticipated. "I said work, Leon," she whispered, attempting to keep a handle on herself. Leon hesitated for an instant, recalling what his charm skill did to her. He sensed the tiny changes in her posture, how she was responding to him more acutely. Though a small smile played on his face, he turned off his charm, not wishing to abuse her. "Okay, my love," he murmured, his voice warm with love. "Let's get down to work." And so they spent the remainder of the morning working together, side by side. Arya discussed the reports, sharing her views and opinions. Leon listened carefully, making occasional teasing comments, but always valuing her brains and opinions. When it was time to make a decision, he sought her opinion and stamped the documents accordingly. Their work was productive, efficient, and yet, amidst the jobs, there existed a quiet, unspoken rapport that went from one to the other. The banter, the touches, the silent conversation. It was all part of their life they were constructing together. The golden sun of the afternoon was high in the sky, its soft but fiery light spreading over the Moonwalker estate. Leon and Arya stood in the large, enclosed training area, a slight breeze pulling at their hair and clothing. The arena was enormous. A gigantic oval-shaped floor with stone pillars rising from it to be adorned with ancient patterns of runes. The earth consisted of soft mud and reinforced boulders, ideal for battle without doing a great deal of permanent damage. Along the boundary, there stretched tall trees creaking with the wind and casting fractured silhouettes about the field. This was not an ordinary battleground. It was the private playing field of the Moonwalker Manor, reserved strictly for the family's highest echelons and their most inner conflicts. And today, they had it for themselves alone. Leon had replaced his aristocratic clothes with a streamlined black training uniform. Close-fitting but supple, carefully designed to permit swift, fluid movement. As he stood against the light of the sun-kissed arena, he resembled a dark deity, tall, broad-shouldered, and deadly. His shoulder-length black hair ruffled softly in the breeze, enhancing his wild, uncivilized good looks. His golden eyes flashed keenly in the sunlight. He was a weapon wrapped in flesh, and each inch of him cried out his deadly charm. A woman killer without even trying to seduce a woman. Across from him stood Arya, who had also replaced her Nobel gown with training cloth, and the change was nothing short of breathtaking. She sported a tight purple training suit that hugged her luscious curves, accentuating her impossibly sexy figure. Her full, big breasts jiggled slightly despite her shallow breathing, and her curvy waist and voluptuous hips made it difficult for anyone, even Leon, to focus. Her long purple hair was in a high ponytail, leaving the elegant line of her neck visible. Her deep purple eyes, shining in the sunlight, were fierce, proud, and irresistibly beautiful. The two of them resembled less like a couple and more like two mythical heroes, waiting to come head-to-head and shake the heavens. Both of them spent a morning binding up all formal work early and then take a short, well-deserved break before both turn up here for practice. Arya moved into a fighting stance smoothly, her gaze locked playfully on Leon. "Darling," she called out in a sweet voice, the word flowing from her lips like honey. "Are you ready?" Leon's lips twisted into a slow, wicked grin, his golden eyes burning warmly at her words. To hear her address him as darling so naturally made something deep within him purr with satisfaction. "Ever ready, honey," he said, his voice low and confident. Arya nodded tightly, tightening her position, ready to go. But just as she could start moving, Leon held up a hand. "Wait, honey," he said hurriedly as if he remembered something. Arya blinked, tilting her head a notch in confusion. "Why?" she asked, slightly furrowing her brow. Leon laughed and flashed her with a boyish smile. "Just give me 1 second. Just a little adjustment." Though still confused, Arya slowly nodded, unclenching her fists a bit as she gazed at him with interest. Within his mind, Leon swiftly activated his system. A pale blue screen flickered on, visible to him alone. He opened the system shop, the numerous martial arts and abilities displayed tidily, each of them bearing its own price tag. In the corner of the shop window at the top, a small message glowed. "Current balance, blank points, 60. Leon glanced at the figure for a second, his finger held poised over the screen. He flicked the menu sharp and swift, his mind concentrating as he scrolled down to the combat skills option. Leon clicked his tongue softly. TCH. Still not sufficient for the truly insane and good skill, he thought. He scrolled down the list of skills. Many of the powerful arts were out of his reach, blocked behind prices of 100 or even 500 blank points, or even in 1,000. He sighed internally. Guess I'll have to. Grow the harem quicker if I'm going to get more points, he thought grimly, a wicked smile playing at the corner of his mouth. He scrolled through the list slowly, eyes squinting as he examined each skill. Most of them looked impressive, strong arts that promised ruinous power. But none of them were quite what he was looking for. After another moment of cautious consideration, he found it, the ideal martial art for his current domain. The title had appeared on the screen, straightforward, but with a power that caught him at once. Void Breaker Art, just what he needed, something that bridged close-quarters brutality and mid-range accuracy. The adaptability, the ferocity. It called out to him. He didn't think twice. He clicked the buy button. Without hesitation, he clicked buy. Ding. 50 blank points lost. Host successfully learned Void Breaker Art. The system went on. Void Breaker Art. Lower-tier martial art used to focus on flexibility and ferocity. Master of close combat ferocity and mid-range attack. needs instinctive adaptation during combat. The Voidbreaker martial art is evolvable martial art. Host is able to evolve this marital art using blank points. Leon's body instantly stiffened as he could sense the martial art starting to etch itself on his muscles. Not just facts, but muscle memory, seared into his bone and blood by the system. His heart went hammering, and he staggered a little and then regained balance. It felt exhilarating. Then the wide, abandoned grin spread upon his face, like a lottery winner who just struck jackpot. This wasn't a waste, he thought triumphantly. This is an investment in the future. He couldn't wait to see just how far he could take this new skill, how much farther he could refine it. Then, suddenly, Leon was jerked out of his daydream by a gentle voice. "Darling." He blinked, seeing that he had been staring into space, his mind distracted by the excitement of his new power. He swiveled his head, and there she was, Arya. Her purple eyes sparkled with amusement, her eyes soft but keen as ever. She cocked her head, a sly smile on her lips. "Why are you grinning like an idiot?" she teased, her voice delicate but inquiring. Before Leon could even answer, his own grin grew mischievous as well, leaning in a fraction closer, the voice dropping to a teasing growl. "Because I was just thinking of how I'm going to fuck you senseless tonight. That's why I'm excited." Arya's eyes popped wide, and her face flushed a gorgeous color of red within seconds. What nonsense are you saying?" she stuttered, covering her mouth hastily with her hand in an attempt to hide her shock. Leon laughed, delighted by her adorable reaction. Her usual elegance cracked open to reveal such raw shyness. It made her even more irresistible. Arya quickly cleared her throat, regaining her composure, although her cheeks were still burning. "And now focus," she said firmly, taking her stance again. "We're here to train, not to flirt." "As you command, honey," Leon replied with a mock salute, laughing and sliding into a stance himself, his body now quietly shifting into the form imposed by the Voidbreaker art. The tension between them snapped taut, no longer amusing but stark. The training was about to start. The training ground lapsed into a deep quiet, interrupted only by the gentle caress of the wind against the weathered stones. Leon and Arya stood opposite one another, their bodies loose yet tense, two top predators assessing the space between them before they struck. They assumed their positions, their eyes locked, an odd mix of tenderness and competitiveness flickering between them. Arya smiled first, a lovely curve of her lips that made her purple eyes glint. "You first, darling," she whispered, raising a hand and summoning him with a teasing gesture. Leon laughed, his golden eyes flashing with mischief. "As you please, my dear," he murmured, voice low and full of promise. Unwarning, he lunged forward. The Voidbreaker art responded immediately. His body was coursing with an alien speed and accuracy, even for him, his muscles accelerating more quickly and incisively than ever before. In the instant, Leon was standing before Arya, his fist cutting across the air in a lethal ease. Arya's eyes had widened a little, just barely, impressed at the sudden onset of speed. But she did not panic. With fluid ease, she tilted her body, deflecting the blow with the back of her hand, her body spinning gracefully out of the strike's path like a blooming flower in a storm. "Darling," she breathed, her voice tinged with excitement, "your speed is incredible. It's even faster than many Master Realm cultivators. And among Novice Realm, you're unmatched." Leon grinned wide, cocky and teasing. "That's only the start, sweetheart," he told her, his voice heavy with assurance. "Now, prepare yourself." Arya's mouth twisted into a savage grin. She nodded decisively. "Come," she dared, her voice low and exhilarating. Leon didn't wait. They met. A whirl of fists and feet, of dodges and ripostes. Leon attacked like lightning. Every blow swift, savage, unpredictable. The Voidbreaker art blended brutal close-range attacks with smooth sidesteps and mid-range swings. Every blow he struck was clean, precise, deadly. Arya, however, was no easy opponent. Despite Leon's blistering pace and developing martial prowess, She glided like poetry in motion. Her parries were effortless. Her ripostes were swift, but controlled, never applying more force than necessary. She was elegance honed to a knife. He whirled again around to her, unleashing a high kick that would have crushed ribs, but Arya easily sidestepped, her motions so smooth they seemed almost practiced. He's just a beginner, Arya thought, her heart pounding as she dodged the kick by mere inches. But he fights me straight up, like he's in my same plane of existence. Her mind began to spin as she blocked another punch, feeling the sheer force behind his blow even as she absorbed it with flawless control. One level below, she thought, wonder germinating even as she parried. I can sense his strength, the force of each blow, but he doesn't restrict. Her eyes opened in surprise as she dodged another attack, observing how much his movement copied hers. He's anticipating my actions, she was thinking in amazement. His fluidity, his flexibility, it's unbelievable. And this of his martial art is unnatural yet effective and potent. Heaven alone knows where he studied it. It's not anything I've ever seen. Another punch landed on her, a quick, strong jab to her ribs. She deflected it easily with a sharp arm guard, but her chest fluttered with something more than respect. Her respect for him increased with each step he took. Leon's mind was racing as he battled her. Arya is incredible, he thought, watching as she danced around his attacks with the grace of a seasoned warrior. Every time his strike seemed to land, she was already out of range, her body anticipating his every move. Her timing, her instincts. It's unreal. I'm barely keeping up. He felt the burn of his own missed opportunities, the irritation at how she was always one step ahead. But it was precisely that ability, that feeling of strategy and control, that he found himself admiring her for. She's a born look-like warrior, he thought, avoiding another quick strike that could have taken him down. The way she reads the field, the way she always knows what to do next. His respect for her, not only as a woman, but as a warrior, grew with each impact. How'd I get so lucky in this new life? He thought as he only dodged a punch thrown at his face. She is not only lovely, she's deadly. And she is with me. Their movements increased in speed, ferocity. Their breathing labored. Sweat dripped down their bodies, shining in the light, blending with the effort of their struggle. Neither of them indicated any fatigue. Every punch, every kick was an extension of the other's will. The fight between them was not only physical, but also emotional, a conflict of wills. Neither of them was willing to quit. Neither was willing to be the first to disrupt the cadence of their battle. They battled on until the sun started to set into the horizon, coloring the sky orange, purple, and crimson. Finally, both unleashed a final blow, Leon's fist and Arya's palm colliding with one another in midair. Boom! The shockwave blew dust around them. Both stepped back a pace, panting, sweat glinting on their flushed faces. Finally, without a word, both simply collapsed back onto the training ground, lying side by side on the warm earth, chests heaving, hearts racing. Leon turned his head slightly toward her, grinning despite the exhaustion. "You're scary, honey," Leon teased, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he wiped the sweat from his brow. "I almost thought I'd die by your hands before the night's over." Arya smiled, a gentle, musical sound that hung in the air between them, the tension of the fight lingering in the unspoken words. "And you," she returned, her tone light and playful, but her own breathing labored from the struggle. "You know I would never hurt you." Desist with the idiocy. Leon chuckled, the chuckle low within his chest. He let his eyes travel up. The horizon of night-colored sky extended out above them, and the stars sparkled like sparks beginning to flash on a dusk-painted stage. "You're really something," Arya remarked, wiping sweat from her forehead as she stood watching him, her eyes glinting with a combination of admiration and amusement. "For a novice-level player, you're more than impressive. I'd say no one could compare to you in the novice or an early master level." Leon laughed, his grin lazy and content. "Well, I'm happy to know I've impressed my hot and sexy training partner," he said, the words slipping out with ease, his tone playful yet sincere. Arya's heart skipped, her cheeks going pink at his plain, honest compliment. She turned her head to him, a gentle smile playing on the edges of her lips. There was a glow in her eyes, a love that grew more intense with each moment. "Fool," she whispered fondly, her tone filled with love and a dash of teasing admonishment. For a while, they just lay there, side by side, the world hushed around them. Their bodies, warm from the fight, vibrated with the remaining energy of their battle together. The quiet was easy, room for them to breathe in each other's space without words. At last, Leon shattered the silence. He grunted softly as he sat up, extending his aching limbs with a grimace. His muscles protested from the fierceness of the sparring, but it was a pleasant ache. He glanced up at the sky, now completely dark, the stars shining brightly against the night. "Let's go, sweetheart," he said, holding out his hand to her with a smile. "We have to clean up before dinner." Arya nodded, feeling the sticky grip of sweat on her body. "Yes," she agreed, standing elegantly and stretching herself. "I feel so sweaty." Then Leon left his hand outstretched, and without hesitation, Arya put her smaller hand into his. Their fingers intertwined easily, as if they had always been destined to fit like that. Still gasping for breath, they slowly made their way back toward the mansion, the waning light creating long shadows behind them. As they approached the grand doors, Leon got the notice of one nearby maid. "Prepare our supper," he ordered with a casual smile, "and bring it to our chamber." The maid hastened into a hasty bow. "Yes, lord." Arya stayed silent in reaction, her face gentle and pensive as she simply nodded, her mind continuing to be concerned with their recent training session. There was tranquility and fullness in silence. She wasn't in a place for words at the moment. Together they walked down the corridor to the bedroom they shared, the soft thud of their footsteps in harmony in the quiet of evening. As they arrived at their room, both step in and Leon closes the door behind them slowly, the heaviness of all that lay beyond evaporated. It was only the two of them in this room. The warm lighting and the soft, intimate warmth of the room enveloped them back, embracing them in a soothing hug. First and foremost, I'd like to take a moment to thank every single one of you who have been a part of this journey with me. Your comments, your support, and your enthusiasm keep me going to bring more of Supreme Spouse System to life. I couldn't do it without you, and I'm so thankful for each reader who has adopted the story thus far. As we keep going deeper into the story of Leon and Arya, I have a little favor to ask. If you've been liking the chapters, I would be utterly delighted if you could leave behind a Power Stone and drop a review. Your feedback not only helps me improve as an author, but it also helps others find the story. Also, your reviews are what give me the motivation to continue going on, knowing that the characters and their journey are connecting with you. If you have any ideas or thoughts on where you'd like the story to proceed, don't hesitate to share them with me. I'm always excited to hear from you and work in what you enjoy into the story. After all, this is as much your journey as it is mine. Thank you once again for your amazing support. Keep watching for more adventures, turns, and of course, Leon and Arya's relationship. With love, Scorpio_Saturn 777, creator of Supreme Spouse System. After the grueling and draining training session, Leon and Arya made their way into their bedroom, their bodies vibrating with fatigue. The gentle click of the door shutting behind them felt like locking them into their own little bubble. Wordlessly, Leon grasped her hand, his touch light yet insistent. Arya glanced up at him, her violet eyes questioning, but when she noticed the teasing glint in his golden ones, a gentle smile pulled at her lips. She let herself be guided, feeling the implied promise in his eyes. Her heart skipped with excitement, knowing precisely what was to come in the future. A rosy blush stained her cheeks as she strolled by his side, feeling heat in each step. He led her directly into the opulent bathroom. The room was enormous and refined, walls constructed of gleaming marble streaked with silver, dominated by a huge sunken tub large enough for several to lounge about in. Crystal lamps cast a warm, golden glow over the room, and the smell of roses wafted delicately on the misty, warm air. Steam curled upwards, and the faint sound of water trickling from a carved dragon-head spout filled the silence. Arya gave Leon a sideways glance, a mischievous little tilt of her head, before stepping forward. Without waiting for him, she slipped her fingers into the hem of her tight purple training suit, peeling it downward inch by inch. Leon's breath caught. Arya slid the suit down, slow inch by tortuous inch, the material reluctant to leave her shiny skin before at last skittering off across the floor in a muted whisper. Arya's plump, supple breasts burst loose, defiantly almost, as if laughing with their liberation. Her golden-hued, cream-white skin radiated in the golden lights, and her petite waist, soft thighs, full hips were shown, every curve holding his attention helplessly. She stood before him now, in nothing but a thin, nearly transparent violet bra and matching panties, if one could even call them that anymore. They hung about her body like mist, accomplishing nothing towards concealing the loveliness underneath. She stood facing the mirror, reached back with slow, taunting hands, unhooked her bra, and allowed it to slide down her arms. It fell silently to the marble floor. Leon's golden eyes blazed hotter. Then, shamelessly, she hooked her thumbs in her panties and, with a nearly studied slowness, slid them down over her hips, bearing the last treasure. The soft pink lips of her pussy glistened faintly under the misty lights, nestled between smooth, luscious thighs. For an instant, time stood still. Leon felt blood pound in his ears, rising, his members stiffening with painful need at the vision of her flawless bare form. Arya sensed the warmth of his eyes in the mirror and blushed, but violet eyes also gleamed with pride. She was proud that her body had this kind of impact on him, proud that she was the one who moved such naked, hungry need within her husband. Clearing her throat, a trifle too rapidly, she shifted slightly and spoke in a low, mock-stern tone, enough staring. "Undress and get in the tub, darling." Her tone was supposed to sound firm, but the slight trembling in her voice and flushed face rendered cute or adorable in his eyes. Without giving him time to reply, Arya turned and walked towards the tub, her hips moving in a slow, hypnotic dance that left Leon's mouth dry. He snarled low in his throat, a sound nobody else heard. "You're playing with fire now, dear," he thought with a wicked smile. "You'll have to pay for it later tonight. Let's see if you dare play with me again after that." Without a moment's hesitation, Leon stripped off his clothes in one fluid motion. His training attire slid away from him, leaving him magnificently naked, all hard muscle, power, and unadulterated masculinity. And between his legs dangled the complete proof of his arousal. Thick, veiny, fully developed, heavy dick bobbing ever so slightly with every strong stride he took toward the tub. Arya, already seated elegantly in the water, couldn't help but. Her violet eyes dropped down and opened a little wider at the sight of the heavy dick hanging between his legs. A flush rose to her cheeks, but she bit her lip and turned away, feigning not to have seen, though the thudding of her heart gave her away. Leon saw her furtive glance, and his smile grew wider wickedly. Without speaking, he got into the tub behind her, the hot water washing over them. He drew her gently onto his lap, moving her so that her soft, perfect ass lay directly against his stiff dick. As the thick length lay between the soft cushions of her ass, Arya couldn't suppress a soft, helpless moan. "MMH." Leon laughed low in his chest, feeling the throb of her little sound against his skin. His arms encircled her thin waist, drawing her closer, their bodies fitting together like two halves of a whole. He brought his face down, his breath ghosting over the fragile shell of her ear. His voice was a deep, wicked whisper. "Comfortable, my love." Arya's body shivered slightly against his. She made a small nod, her cheeks aflame, but would not look at him. Instead, she stared obstinately in front of her, pretending to admire the fancy marble pattern of the bathroom wall. But Leon could sense it, the pressure of her thighs together, the pounding of her heartbeat. He smiled wickedly. Then, he draws her even closer against his chest as the warm water swirled around them. Roses and steam filled the air with scent, but all Leon could scent was her, sweet, soft, so intoxicating. He leaned in, placing a slow, deliberate kiss on the nape of her slender neck. MMH. Arya emitted a soft, helpless moan again, due to his touch. Leon smiled against her skin. Without uttering a word, he activates Touch of Charm skill. Suddenly, his fingertips developed a dim glow imperceptible to the naked eye, an ability that made every touch 100 times more thrilling to the one touched. His fingers lingered slowly on her smooth, exposed belly up to the full, elastic breasts. He cradled them softly in his palms, relishing their weight and warmth against his hands. Leon. Arya inhaled sharply, her back unconsciously arching into his hands. He grinned low against the shell of her ear, admiring the reaction of her body to him. Hungry, quivering, longing for more. He pinched her breasts, not hard, but firmly enough to make her whimper once more. His thumb stroked lazily over her tightened pink nipples, teasing circles that caused her hips to move against him, and his dick, already erect, twitched between her legs. "You're so sensitive, honey," he whispered low, pinching her nipples lightly between his fingers just to hear the breathy moan that spilled from her lips. "And not fair," she gasped, her breath trembling with want. You making me like this." Leon chuckled softly, the sound wicked and gentle all at once. "That's all my plan from very start," he sneered and whispered in her ear. Suddenly, he moved one hand lower, drawing slow, searing paths across her quivering belly, until he brushed against the soft, tender lips of her pussy. Arya thrashed uncontrollably on his lap, a harsh gasp escaping her mouth. "Leon," she whimpered, her voice dripping in need and shyness. Leon smiled like a predator with his quarry in his paws. He did not hurry. He just crept around her folds deliberately, feeling the gathering heat and wetness accumulating there. And then, as swiftly as possible, he thrust one finger into her, slipping past her tender pink entrance with ease. "And!" Arya screamed, her hips bucking against him. Her inner walls gripped his finger greedily, pulling him deeper. Leon growled low in his throat, his body tightening with hers. "So wet already?" He taunted, his voice husky with need. "You're practically begging for me, my love." Arya couldn't respond. Her breathing was rapid, shallow gasps as she held his arm to steady herself, her body shaking with pleasure. Leon couldn't resist. He turned her head, his lips claiming the parted lips in a deep, ravenous kiss. Their lips met once again, wetly, hungrily. Arya set a low, throaty moan into his mouth as Leon probed her with his tongue, gathering every sweet, dizzying flavor she had to give. Their kiss grew sloppy, more frenzied, her hips unconsciously grinding against his hand still embedded between her thighs. When they finally parted, Arya was gasping, her face flushed a gorgeous deep pink. Leon pulled his finger away from her with a wet sound, getting another soft whimper out of her. But he wasn't finished yet. Lifting her gently in his arms, he set her down on the broad edge of the bathtub. Arya blinked at him, disoriented, her legs automatically spreading a little to balance herself, leaving her glistening, needy pussy fully open to his view. Leon smiled at her, a playful, evil grin that threatened no quarter, and bent his mouth to her cunt. The first caress of his tongue upon her soft, puffy lips brought Arya out in a shriek of pleasure, her head falling helplessly back upon her shoulders. Leon. Leon didn't say anything. He just held his hands around her thighs, holding her open and firm while he ravaged her with slow, merciless motions of his tongue. He touched every inch of her, strumming her sensitive little clit with light taps before delving deeper, tasting her sweetness. Arya's fingers tangled themselves in his black hair, yanking helplessly, attempting to draw him in closer. "Leon, please." Don't stop," she groaned, her voice raised and desperate. Her hips moved against his lips, her thighs shuddering as Leon masterfully tormented her, drawing out every shiver, every moan, every agonized gasp from her gorgeous lips. Arya was almost incoherent. Each lick, each suck caused lightning bolts of ecstasy tearing through her frame. "I am coming," she cried out, her voice breaking, her body straining. Leon, listening to her desperate cry, only smiled against her tender skin and redoubled his efforts, suckling her clit ruthlessly into his mouth, his tongue unrelenting. "Leon!" "Anne!" Arya cried out his name, her body convulsing hard as her orgasm flooded over her like a tidal wave. Her fluids spilled into his mouth, and Leon sucked them down with alacrity, holding her shaking body as she dissolved utterly. He grasped her, not allowing her to drop, his warm, steady hands on her waist as he indulged in each morsel of her sweetness. Arya's breast heaved, her flushed skin gleaming, violet eyes half shut in stuporous ecstasy. Leon at last raised his head, his chin and lips damp with her flavor, a self-satisfied, proud smile curling over his chiseled features. "Delicious," he breathed, his voice filled with possessive love and arousal. Arya, still shaking, could muster only a faint, gasping laugh. "You're a beast," she breathed accusingly. Leon merely grinned. "And you, my love," he rose slowly to kiss her again, "and my most favorite meal." She blushed, and Leon picked up Arya again back in his lap easily, placing her comfortably against him. She let her guard down, resting her head against his shoulder, but she couldn't help but feel the unmistakable hardness pressing insistently against her soft ass. Sensing it prodding her so eagerly, Arya moved slightly and then rolled her face up to him, her cheeks flushed a deep pink. "Darling, you must be in pain," she whispered softly, almost shyly. Leon laughed low, his golden eyes dark and burning. "Yeah, a little," he confessed with a teasing grin. So, for an instant, they simply looked at one another, tenderness and heat melting into something raw and charged between them. Then, without speaking, Arya moved in his lap until she sat in front of him on her knees, her soaked body against his with nothing in between. With a boldness forged in love and lust, she reached up, pushing his wet black hair back from his face. Then her slender hand closed around his heavy, thick dick. Leon drew in a sharp breath, his abs tensing at her touch. "I'll help you," she whispered, blushing hotly but resolute. Leon smiled, completely captivated. "So sweet. My lovely, perfect wife," he breathed. Arya didn't answer. Instead, she concentrated on him. She began to move her hands slowly back and forth up and down his aching shaft, mesmerized as a bead of pre-cum formed at the engorged tip. With a tiny, mortified growl, she leaned forward and gave the tip a timid, delicate lick. Leon grunted, his hands clenched on the rim of the tub, urged by his response. Arya kissed the crown of his cock, making gentle, wet kisses all along the delicate flesh before, summoning courage. She parted her lips and took him into her mouth. Leon's eyes clenched and his body strained with the explosive pleasure. "Fuck, Arya," he groaned between gritted teeth. Her soft, warm mouth was like a little slice of heaven, far too perfect. She nodded her head slowly initially, her hand caressing the base that her mouth could not reach. Her tongue danced around his shaft with gentle, ravenous motions, enjoying his flavor and his heavy, masculine aroma that created dizziness and increased her lust. Arya's thoughts fogged up. "Tastes so good. Smells so good." She vaguely thought, herself getting nearly addicted to the raw, savage essence of him. Leon groaned once more as she began to bob more rapidly, her mouth making wet, obscene noises that bounced off the marble walls. He couldn't help himself, his hand grabbing into her purple hair, softly but firmly regulating her pace, forcing his cock deeper into her open mouth. "You're amazing, Arya," he rasped, his voice harsh and broken by ecstasy. The pleasure came quickly, overwhelming, blazing through him. I'm coming, Arya," he growled through clenched teeth. As he spoke, Arya did not retreat. She moved faster instead, hollowing out her cheeks, violet eyes staring up at him with such sugary resolve that Leon lost all reason. With a bellow of raw, animalistic pleasure, he wrapped his fingers around the back of her head, jerking his hips involuntarily as he drove his thick, throbbing cock deep into the warm cavern of her mouth. He spilled out with thick, scalding jets of his semen, flooding her mouth full. Arya swallowed all of it subserviently, without spilling a drop, though a fine dribble slid from the edge of her lips, down her chin. Leon harshly panted, gazing at her in a combination of wonder and overwhelming love. When his orgasm finally subsided, Arya gently pulled back with a soft pop sound, licking the remaining cum off his shaft and her lips with a cute, shy motion. Finally, she cleared her mouth with a little use of mana and looked up at him, her face flushed and glowing with pride and affection. "Your taste. It's too addictive," she whispered, cheeks red. Leon laughed, low and deeply satisfied. With no hesitation, he hauled her up into his arms and mashed his lips against hers, kissing her passionately. His hand drifted down to grab her round, perfect ass, causing her to squeak into his mouth. "You too, my love," he whispered against her lips. "All of you. So perfect. So mine." Arya whimpered cutely, dissolving into his arms. After a long, panting kiss, both finally eased up. They exchanged lazy, teasing caresses as they completed washing one another's bodies. Leon's powerful hands caressing Arya's curves with loving soap strokes, and Arya tracing the hard muscles on his body playfully with her gentle fingers. The passion between them never went away completely, but there was a sweet gentleness now, also a wordless dialogue with every touch, every look. After they were both washed and well teased, they finally emerged from the tub, their bare bodies glistening with water. Leon pulled two big, fluffy towels from the side, one wrapping around Arya's slender form with a soft kiss on her forehead before wrapping others around her own waist. Hand in hand, their hearts still pounding, they exited the steamy bathroom, both aware that tonight was far, far from over.